We are here. Yes, we are. Thank you for hopping onto the channel tonight to watch this live stream. I hope it is interesting for those, like I said just a few minutes ago on my Facebook group. This is going to be about the Pro 1000. Yes, I know. I know you guys have been hearing all of the weird things this printer will perform behind your back and in front of your face, in your face, that is. I prepared a list of items that I'm going to go ahead and cover. And I don't know everything about this printer. Probably only know about 50% of what it actually does. But I'm going to try to cover at least what I am aware of it doing. And basically the features that this printer comes packed with. Okay? For the price, it is incredible. So again, say what you will about it. I just cannot argue with the fact that this thing produces ridiculously good images, at least on paper, even cheapo paper like ProLuster. It does an amazing job on fine art papers. Really, that is what it is made for. It is made for creating large, gorgeous prints. And I'm going to share a little secret with you guys as I go through these items. Yeah, it's going to be good. I have yet to test it, and I may just go ahead and get the nerve to go ahead and do this upgrade so that I can test whether in fact this is true or not. But before we start, let me just tell you about my day today. So, got to sleep in. That was wonderful because I've been kind of a little bit under the weather. Um, like fighting a bit of like a flu-like syndrome, if you will. And I don't know where it came from. I think it was from my shingles shot that I got a week before we went on our trip to Florida to celebrate our anniversary and my birthday, and along with my in-laws as well. They were also having birthdays. All in all, it was wonderful, but I've been feeling just crappy every morning. I wake up with a cough. And again, I think it's just due to that. And it'll take a couple of weeks to get rid of it. I've been keeping busy going over to the local school where my wife retired from and helping some kids just, understand what's going on. These kids are newly arrived, say what you will about immigrants, but we have them here in this area. And the kids, they need a lot of help. And I don't care about politics when it comes to helping kids. So I'm there every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday and spend a couple of hours with them. And one-on-one, which is what they need. And since I speak Spanish, yeah, even better. So anyway, been doing that. You see my sniffles? Yeah. So today we did some yard work in the front. I mowed the back grass, the side grass, the front grass, the neighbor's grass. Everything got mowed. My son came over and we pulled out all of the what do they call it? Not the perennials, but the annuals out and prepare the ground for next spring. And then we went out to a steak restaurant and we treated him with a steak dinner. So he went home. I came back home, relaxed a little bit, and I am here now getting ready to at least share with you guys what I know about this Pro 1000. And Rusty Nelson, I just saw him pop up in here. Maybe he can share some of his findings because, again, he obtained a Pro 1000 long before I did. So he's the guy that I relied upon early on my Pro 1000 adventure to find out everything that I could about this incredible printer. And it really is. It's just a very difficult girl to get along with sometimes. And I don't want to be sexist, but I call my printers ladies. So that's all there is to it. Just like drones, we call them girls. She flies well. She hit the wall today. That's what we say. But again, nothing sexist about it. It's just that it's actually a term of endearment, if you will. All right, so let's say howdy to everybody here on the chat. And again, if you just arrived, we got 19 people already. I would love to see 19 entries here from everyone. Tell us who you are and where you're from. And whether you're a first-time watcher, a returnee, and I kind of recognize the names. But again, we need to say howdy to each other because, of course, this is a community. and we are all here to learn from each other, not just from this mouth yapping, but from everyone here. So we have Spike 597 from Madison, Wisconsin. He just popped in rather early. Anthony Petit from Killeen, Texas. Eli is here. He's from North Carolina. Young man, a magnificent drone flyer and cinematographer from the air, and also does photography. And of course, he's here because he's interested in photo printing. Third Eye View, Killeen, Texas as well. Let's see, Scott S. from Ohio. Nice to have you here. Kalimokale 1. I'm not sure whether I'm massacring that name. Hello from Long Island, New York. Rizard Tisowski from Ontario. George Gabb, of course, is here from Spokane, Washington. And Spokane, Washington. He says it's 55 there this morning. Yeah, it's been chilly here as well. We've been enjoying this nice, cool break. Maybe we'll warm up. I don't know. We're hoping to have a good Halloween so we can go out with Nathan and do some trick-or-treating. We missed it the last couple of years. We were in Florida. We always try to go around that time. But now that my mom is no longer with us, I really don't need to go down as often unless I'm just going to visit my sister, who also lives there, or go over to Disney. It used to be that I was going about 3 times a year while my mom was in the rest home. Iglo Aradontir from Iceland. I'm sure I'm killing that name too. Rusty Nelson Photography, as I said, is here with us. So that's awesome. Now, before I begin with this Pro 1000 business, someone was asking a question, and I'm going to go ahead and attempt to do a demonstration, not a video. Maybe I'll do a video as well. But, half the time that I try to do a demonstration, it just gets messed up. But we'll hope for the best. So we'll switch over to the desktop, and I'm going to go ahead. I have Photoshop already queued up here. And of course, I got the standard image open, which is the standard that we use to test everything. Everything revolves around this image, folks. So you're going to test your printer's ability to produce as good a result as possible from that particular image. And so this is something that everyone has to do or should do. Here it is right here. And so what you will do simply is just open it and print it. Open it, file, print. Do not edit it. Do not alter it. And just print it using the printer driver. In this case, printer manages colors. And you would just go ahead and go into your settings. Very simple. And set it to ICM. Boom. Make sure you got a paper that will match a paper choice that you have in your drop-down menu. In this case, I'm using Red River paper, so that's not going to be possible for me. I would have to then print, letting Photoshop handle color and turn off all the color management in the driver. You see what I'm saying? So if I was using, say, ultra premium photo paper luster, I would be able to just print with the driver because I'm using an actual Epson paper. But because I'm using another luster paper, I have to choose this paper choice because it requires me to do so that it can do the so-called ink density levels correctly and so forth. And then in the application, I would then choose the correct profile. Oh my, do I have a lot of profiles. So it would have to be one made for the Red River paper. Okay, so that's basically it. But we're not going to get into color management. I just want to show you something because someone asked, hey, how come my yellows are not coming up correctly? Now, it turns out that it had nothing to do with settings, but it was something to do with something he did. Okay, and he didn't realize that until much later, but that's another subject. But let me tell you what will happen. Say you're editing your own photographs, okay? And quite often we get a little bit carried away with our adjustments, our editing, and we may end up oversaturating some areas. Okay, you may think, wow, this looks fantastic on my monitor, and it is calibrated. I did it. I have it perfectly calibrated. My results match. But while you're editing, you may end up like possibly creating some colors that are just beyond the printer's ability to reproduce them. Even the Pro 1000, as good as that printer is, on a lesser printer, yeah, that will hit you even faster. I'm going to go ahead and show you a setting, because as it looks right here, check out these colors right here. This row is impossible to reproduce. Okay, these are out of gamut, and you will absolutely not realize that. You think that your printed image on paper is going to be able to display colors such as these, and it is not possible. We're going to go to View and then Color Warning. That is Shift Control Y if you're on a Windows machine. Here we go. Wow, what just happened? Look at that. Everything practically everything grayed out, except maybe the girls and the boys' skin tones. That's the only thing that did not get affected. And this image here, but look at the yellows. The oranges did not go gray. The blue sky completely did. Most of the red of the strawberries did. And all of these colors just went down the you-know-what. Okay? So what does that tell you? What does that tell you? It tells you that those colors are simply impossible to be printed the way they are, displayed by your monitor. They're just way beyond the ability of the printer with the inks that we have, regardless of how good today's inks are. Like I was saying to someone, let me go back to me, because I'm going to then show you another example, even better one. In a video that I did, because someone asked, would it be possible ever to create, for companies that is, to create the perfect ink set? And I said, well, OEM right now is about as close as perfect as we get. Perfect is just a term. It doesn't exist. So OEM is what third-party companies try to match. Okay, when they create an ink set that is supposed to be for the P800, they're trying to match the capabilities of Ultrachrome K3 HD inks. Well, they'll either fall flat on their face attempting to do that, or they will come close, but no cigar. It will not be perfect, okay? And by perfect, I mean a perfect match, so that you can come back, and if you really don't know much about color management and you're just using the driver to control color, you always print with Epson papers, so you can go ahead and use the driver. Let it do everything for you. Choose ICM in the color mode, and then whatever paper you happen to have on hand, OEM inks, you'll get outstanding results every single time. Okay? If your prints are too dark or too light when they come out compared to your monitor, that's a matter of monitor calibration. That's a matter of the brightness of your monitor needing to be adjusted so that it matches the output that the printer produces. Okay? The printer produces what you feed it. Okay? If you feed it something brighter than it looks on your monitor, it's going to look brighter than it looks on the monitor. If you feed it something that is physically darker than what it appears on the monitor, that means your monitor is too bright. Okay? And you're darkening your prints subconsciously, your images. And so the printer receives a darker than normal image. Guess what? It's not going to look this good. It's going to look dark. All right? That's the simple fact. So, so what happens now? You're going to switch over to some other ink, a third-party ink that claims that they are a match to OEM. Of course, they're lying. There's no such thing. Even Cone Colors, okay, is not a perfect match. They're as close as it gets, but it's not a perfect match. So you will get a certain slight change, okay, between an OEM produced print, OEM ink, on OEM paper, matching, and the same paper printed with the, say, cone color inks or PC K3 HD, okay, whatever. Ink Owl, Ink Republic, inkjetcards.us, Octo Ink. What's the other one from the UK? Marut. So anyway, the difference that you will see is really the difference between OEM and that inkset. That inkset can only produce a given, output. And that is it. So when you migrate to that new inkset and you have flushed out all the old original OEM ink and now you're printing with that particular set of inks, you're going to get what you see. And it may not match the original OEM print. Simple as that. So that will be the difference. Now, you can counteract that difference by producing an ICC profile specifically for that setup. That printer, that inkset that you're now using, and the paper, whether it's Epson or someone else's paper. Okay? So there is no perfect ink. It's always going to be slightly less capable than OEM. And we're not even going to talk about longevity. Okay, that's another subject. So what would constitute perfect? In this case, the person wanted to know whether, I know we talked about this before, but I just wanted to reiterate a little bit about this subject because it is interesting. The person wanted to know, well, I want an inkset that will reproduce skin tones perfectly. Well, that's just a specific area, okay, in the photographic world, skin tones. So this inkset excels at reproducing skin tones. Well, I don't care about that. I don't shoot people. I shoot landscapes. Okay. So how's that going to help me? Not much. Okay. Now, what would be the perfect inkset? And someone just jokingly answered me and said, well, the perfect inkset would have about 1,000 colors, maybe even more, about 1,000 different cartridges. You know how big that printhead would have to be and that printer would have to be? Because that would be the only way that you would be able to reproduce what? This image perfectly, including all of those out of gamut colors. Okay? We are restricted in most printers with 8, 9, 11, 12 colors. So far, I don't know of any printer that has more than 12 colors in its ink palette. So it would have to have a multitude of more colors because really an RGB file, I believe even 8-bit, okay, has, and let me see, I'm terrible about math, so we're going to go ahead and load a calculator. We're going to go ahead and show you what I mean. So each channel has 255 steps. In other words, from black all the way to white, regardless whether it's red, green, or blue. So we go multiply this 2 times. Okay, so a regular RGB at its very best file can have 16,581,375 shades of whatever. Okay? Even that is not enough to be able to reproduce every single color in this image here. Okay? And I know I tell you guys to always use this image. This image excels the capabilities of any printer. Did you hear me? Any printer and any inkset, regardless of who makes it. Okay? You get that? So this image is beyond the capabilities of any printer and any inkset at this point. The best you can get is this. Does this match my monitor? Well, certainly not these colors. They're dull by comparison. They really are. And if I look at it right now, I would have to light this very, very Well, I have it right here next to my monitor. But as far as neutrality goes, in other words, the neutrality of this image compared to the neutrality of my monitor, as far as my older than heck eyeballs, it matches as far as neutrality. Of course, these strawberries, you saw them turn gray. That's because the red is a little bit beyond the ability of this particular printer to reproduce them. So they're going to be a little bit less brilliant, okay? A little bit less, well, you can say redder. But, I mean, I could probably adjust that, but this is what the printer can do by itself. So, is it good enough? Oh, yeah, it is more than good enough, believe me. So, in order for you to be able to, for instance, here's a really tough image. I have this available in my pack in the Facebook group. It's about 100 megabyte pack that you can download. So this is really a really good image to test your printer's ability to print smooth transitions. Okay. It's not going to be able to reproduce these colors here because this is maximum saturation. As you can see, maybe you can read it or not. 255 right here on the left and 13. This is like several steps above black. Black would be 0. And so what you do is you print this, and you can use a loop to see if you can actually see those fine lines right there. Set number 5. Okay, that's the one you want to see. Notice right here, number 1, the lines are very, very close together. They may, depending on your printer, they may end up just kind of blending together. Okay, and that's what you're looking for. You're looking for your printer's ability to not only reproduce a very smooth transition right here, especially right here. This is like the spectral transition bar, if you will. Red, over here would be infrared, over here would be, ultraviolet, I guess. And so red and green light mixed together create yellow, and so on, all the way down. You're going to look for 0 banding. Okay, you want to have a smooth transition of tones when it's printed on paper. And you also want to see whether your printer can print fine lines together. Look at that. This is separated by single pixel. Okay, so you're going to look at that with a loop. Now on matte paper, this will just blend together. Okay, that first set right here, that will just blend together because matte paper has a more of a wicking action. Here are some thicker lines, more than a pixel thickness. I think this tells you how many pixels wide it is, and so forth. So this is a really good image to print, as well as right here. Look at that. Single pixel line, and wider and wider and wider. You're going to look for smooth edges. You're going to look for 0 transitions. But let's go ahead and check out the gamut of this image, whether it's this, totally out of gamut or in gamut. Gamut warning, turn it on. Oh my gosh, the whole thing is practically, out of gamut. You see what I mean? So you need an image. In other words, your control should always exceed the capabilities of whatever the instrument it is you're testing it against. So in this case, it's a printer that prints color, especially continuous tone color. So this will tell you a lot about your printer's capabilities and that particular inkset you're using. So again, it's just a short demo to show you what actually happens. So when you complain about, oh, my red doesn't match my monitor, oh, my yellow doesn't match my monitor, the yellow flowers are dull by comparison to what I see on my monitor. Well, more than likely is when you edited that image, you actually oversaturated it and made it go beyond the printer's ability. Okay, now this display that you just saw does not necessarily match, perfectly to what the output of the print will be, but it just kind of gives you an idea of what out of gamut means. Okay, and basically that just means that it's beyond most printers' capabilities to reproduce color the way you actually see it through a backlit system, like a LCD or what do they have now, LED displays. So that's simply it. It's interesting, right? So don't let that fool you. It's something that we simply have to accept, that, of course, everything's going to look super dull on paper compared to your monitor. Okay, even though that leotard is like neon red, okay? Well, you should see what it looks like on the monitor. Even brighter and more intense. So this is greatly dulled down to what it actually appears on the monitor. This is not my image. I downloaded it from a free site. Again, they don't even give you the name of the photographer, so I cannot credit the photographer. But anyway, that image, I did not attempt to change it in any way, shape, or form. I just printed it the way I downloaded it, and it was pretty saturated to begin with. So that's what I mean about when you get on your photo editor and you take an image and you bring it from what it used to be, say from a raw file, and you enhance it to the point where it's gone way beyond the capability of the printer. Sure, it looks great on your monitor, but the monitor can show you colors your printer will never be able to reproduce. I don't care what printer you own. It's not going to work. Okay, so you need to sort of be very careful and just kind of tone down your editing process a little bit. Don't go too crazy adding saturation and do selective color management in your images. You can do that. You can actually just affect red or affect yellow or orange or blue. You can do that easily in Lightroom by just using a tool that's built in. But again, you may bring that particular shade beyond the ability of the printer to be able to reproduce it on paper. Okay? Any questions? Please go ahead and ask. This is going to be another one of those. Last week, you guys asked so many questions that I almost didn't get a chance to discuss anything of what I had planned to do. So that was wonderful. This is what I want. I want you guys to interact. I want you guys to ask away. This is it. This is a free-for-all tonight, just like any other Saturday. And again, you can just ask. And if you need an hour's worth of online, then I have a service that I offer, $45 for 1 hour. I usually go about an hour and 20 minutes anyway, because the first 20 minutes we're just chit-chatting about what you have and what you don't have and so forth. And so again, everyone who has done it has left completely satisfied. Just ask. If you don't believe me, just ask in the Facebook group, and they will tell you. So anyway, here is a free night. You can just go ahead and post whatever question you have, and we'll try to address it. Sometimes other people that are here on the stream will actually address it before I even get to it. Yeah, I'm a little slow sometimes. Let's see if anyone else has joined us. Harold Goldberg is here from cloudy Richmond, Virginia. Marinos Michael, hello from Capopetria, Cyprus. Wow, Cacopetria. Okay, I will pronounce that hard like Spanish. Capopetria, Cyprus. Awesome. I think you're new. Thank you. I hope you enjoy the evening. Please hang with us as long as you can. And again, I hope we put out some information that'll be helpful to you. Claire Hopkins, hello from London, England. All right. And I think that's a lady, right? We have a lady with us tonight. We better behave, right? We got to be gentlemen. Rizard Tisowski, proud but nervous owner of a Pro 1000. Don't worry. We're going to set you straight. This is going to be awesome. It's going to be epic, I hope. That's Sheila Brown from Georgia. All right, another lady. Iglo Aradotir. Not nervous owner of a Pro 1000 and the cleaning cycle issues I do experience that every 60 hours we should regard the ink consumption as part of the printer's maintenance. We're going to cover that. Hang in there, guys. Hang in there. Henry Stoffel from Wells, Maine always says, hit that like button. Again, if you do nothing tonight, hit that like button. Okay, that'll help the channel because they see that. They see that, and the video as it becomes, the live stream is live right now. It's being captured by the server, and then afterwards it will be processed into a video that you can re-access at a later date. They will then use that ratio of likes to, put it up, maybe suggest it a little bit more than some other video may have, may be suggested. So it always helps. We want to get views. We want to get some watch time going here. Rizar says, nervous as I watch my waste tank fill up. Yeah, waste tanks will not really hold that much ink. Only about like 260 something ml of ink total. And the good thing is that here in the U.S., I don't know where you're at, but here in the U.S., you can pick them up for about $15 each, and you can buy them from some of the camera companies that do online services, also on eBay as well. So they're not too expensive to buy, but again, that's a lot of ink going there, and so there are ways to sort of increase the ratio toward your favor. The cleaning cycles are going to happen regardless, but what we want to do, of course, I always say that I don't want to get off the subject and go down some tangent, but the idea is your ink costs a lot of money. Use it for creating prints. Use it for this instead of cleaning cycles, right? So the cleaning cycles will occur regardless. So let's make some more prints so that we have something tangible to show for all of that ink. Of course, we will use 3, 4, 5, 6 times more ink in producing prints. But that's really what you want. You don't want to say, well, I made 2 prints this month and I wasted, 10 times more ink between cleaning cycles. Oh, come on. That makes no sense. So we're going to cover all of that. Anthony Petit says, hello to Third Eye View. Charles Nix, hello, Jose, glad to see you. He says hello to some of the other folks that are here. And Mr. Doogs, D-O-O-G-S, I assume that's Doogs, 3, agreed. All right, so let's just quick look at our Facebook and see how we're doing here. Last time I checked today, I think I approved some members. I actually also said hello to the members. We have 3,093 members as of this very moment. Let me refresh and see if we got a couple more. No, we're still at that same number. Awesome. Okay. So what I've been doing is the last couple of videos, I've been putting them as announcements so that they're always on the top and you catch them. If you just basically jump into the page, you will see them. They'll be right on top. Let's see. Here's a Pro 1000 owner. Maybe this has been posted before, but I'll ask anyway. How do you turn off ink monitoring on the Pro 1000 to continue printing? In other words, here's a person that's, wanting to continue using those cartridges. Which ones? These babies right here. And you want to refill them, but you got that chip, okay, that no longer will report ink level because it's empty. At that point, it reached empty. Again, that's going to be part of tonight's discussion. But anyway, that's a good question. There's a way to do that. It's basically about the same process with any Canon printer. Canon's a little strange where they will allow you to do that. They will allow you to just say, okay, forget it. I don't need any more ink monitoring. And the moment you disable that, you can continue printing. You just now have to monitor your ink levels and refill your cartridges pretty much constantly to keep them be on a certain level of fill, if you will. You don't want them to reach empty, physically empty, because you're no longer going to be able to look at a graph and see the ink levels reported visibly. You'll have nothing that you can go back and say, oh, I still have half a cart. No, you have no clue how much ink you have at that point. So anyway, let's see what else we got, because what we're going to discuss is going to take about a full hour. Now, you guys can jump in, interrupt me whenever you want as I go along each one of these points and just ask something. Okay, don't feel bad about doing that. I want you to do that. Okay. Pro or P800. People are curious about the chipless solutions inks, and they're asking about this. And then I realized, wait a minute, you're not even in the US. You're not even in North America, possibly. You're someplace else. Well, you don't have to worry about that if you're someplace else. Refillable systems work on printers that are zoned outside of North America. This only applies to us poor suckers here in the US and Canada and, of course, Mexico. Mexico is part of North America. So those printers are locked, and the only way to use them is just two ways: chipless solution and, of course, the expensive decoder board. And I'm using the decoder board, so I'm not about to test chipless solutions because I don't really need to. I got 30 full resets to go. Okay, actually 29 to go. And I haven't even hit, not even half my ink is still there. You know what I mean? So my ink levels are showing about 50% and above. So I don't need to worry about that. The only time that I will have to reset the next go around is when a cartridge reaches empty by the chip. In other words, the chip that is internally embedded in that board. Remember, we severed the connection between the chip reader that's inside the printer that actually contacts your cartridge. This chip. And now it's not using this chip any longer. It's using the chip embedded in that board. And the board is only about yay big around. So it refers to that chip for color ID and, of course, level indication. And so what it will do is it'll go empty, and then you just basically press a button. And as I always say, keep those cartridges topped off, because you don't want them to run dry and lose the prime and then start introducing air into your ink lines on the P800. Oh boy, you don't want to have that happen to you. So if you are in the USA, then yes, you have to worry about, using one of those two options. Anywhere else in the world, so far as I know, no problem. You can use those exactly the same, refillable cartridges that everybody has been selling now for, a couple of years at least. All right. Let's see what else we got. All right. So people are wondering what the scratches are on paper, and they always seem to occur. Let me just use a smaller piece of paper here. They always seem to occur on the edges. So say you feed this paper in this direction. This is the leading edge. And so the paper begins to print. Notice that I got at least maybe like a 3/4 inch border, top and bottom. I think the top is a little wider than the bottom. And so as the printhead enters, if it does not find an obstruction, meaning that this paper edge has not risen above a little bit, the clearance between the printhead nozzle check and the paper is in the thousandths of an inch. Okay? So if this paper slightly curled, it's going to get hit by the printhead, and it's going to then possibly leave a mark, because the bottom of your printhead is not spanky clean. It has little nozzles with a droplet just about to be squeezed out, so it may leave some marks. Now, also I should say, yeah, it's awesome. Also, I should say, if you print borderless, where the printer has to immediately start printing. In other words, it doesn't have that nice little 3/4 inch wide grace space, if you will. It may not do a very good job. It may be striking the paper. It may be producing smudges. You really don't want one of those situations to occur. So you want sufficient amount of space so that the printhead enters. The paper now is flat, and it begins to lay down ink. Okay, with plenty of room that is created by that nice wide border. Oh, I don't like whiteboards. Well, you may have to, begin to like them, let's just say, because that's really one way to ensure a nice clean edge on your paper. Now, just make sure this is RC coated paper, so it's going to be relatively flat across the board. When you get into your heavier papers, they may end up having a bit of a curl. And if you get into printing with these 100% rag and cotton type papers that do not have any kind of resin coating, then areas that are dark, meaning they receive a lot more ink, guess what? They get wetter, okay? They get wetter than surrounding areas that have much less ink. So something like this will be a perfect example. You have areas of super, super high density application of ink right here. And then an area where, a lot less ink is applied. These areas will swell, will actually cause the paper to buckle. And guess which way it buckles? Up. And that means this head strikes it, okay? So if that occurs, boy, you just have to mess around with ink density adjustments until you get the minimum ink density that paper requires to produce the blackest black. So you don't want to overdo it. In other words, once you reach black, you don't need any more ink. Okay, so you may actually want to throttle back a little bit. There's adjustments in most higher end printer drivers to allow you to adjust ink density. And with the Pro 1000, for instance, that's part of that media tool, job. The media configuration tool will allow you to custom design a setting for that particular paper. And so if you apply the correct ink density, because remember, you're using an unknown paper, meaning from another maker, and it may be whatever, but that maker will say, hey, you need to use a currently available Canon paper choice. Well, that Canon paper choice may be set to add way too much ink. And so that will cause buckling. That happened. That happened with Red River, what was it? San Gabriel 1.0. Terrible on the P800. It would just oversaturate the paper. Using the correct paper type that they recommended, it would, oversaturate the paper. So I had to go back and just fiddle around and find that correct ink density level that will allow me to just add enough ink to create a deep black, but no more. No less, no more. Okay? At the default setting, it was adding way too much ink and the paper was buckling. I was scratching the living daylights out of my prints. Not a pretty sight. It was awful. And I thought, how can that be? This paper is supposed to be fantastic. But yeah, it just did not get along with the P800 for whatever the reason, especially your wider prints. In other words, 17-inch wide. Oh boy, that was a horror story. Okay, so anything narrower for some reason, maybe it just didn't get a chance to buckle. I also had to then adjust the amount of time it takes for the printhead to pass over and just kind of sit there and pause. Okay, they call that drying time. So it'll pause for a couple of seconds. That gives that area that the printer just laid ink on to sort of dry and settle down a little bit. Okay, and then it will go back and print another pass, stop for a couple of seconds. Printing took forever. Okay, but it did not produce buckling, and I was not getting any more scratches, which was the goal. Okay, and I wanted to get as good a good density as possible, but not overdoing it, because over the so-called standard or default setting that they told you to use was laying down way too much ink, which is really weird because they should have known that. Okay. Anyway, long story short, it took a lot of work to fix it. Just something that you guys may want to keep your eye open for if you end up, getting not just edge problems with head strikes, but along the printed surface. And usually that is caused by the paper literally physically buckling up. And of course, the printhead just strikes it and scratches the living daylights out of your result, especially the very fine arboreta papers. The surfaces are very fragile. Okay, they're not tough like the resin coated paper. I can scratch it with my fingernails and nothing will happen. Ink will not come out. So just something to be aware of. All right, so somebody printed an image. Let me quickly show you. I don't want to make I don't want to make a huge public display out of this. But you notice that that was not neutral, okay? Not at all. It was printed on a 1400 from Epson. That is an ancient, by today's standards, printer. But a good one. The catch is just one black, okay? Just like the original 9000 Mark II from Canon. One black. One black. The Pro 100 has one black and two grays. So yeah, that printer can print neutral. Remember I told you that black ink is really violet, deep violet, and it's neutralized by the compositing of yellow, because yellow and that violet, so-called real true optical blue color is neutralized by yellow. So in this case, this person cannot get a neutral print. What could be the problem? Well, the Pro 100, the R1400 is what it is, may not be able to produce a neutral black and white unless you use a color profile. So if you have only one black, it's very difficult to get a neutral monochrome print, almost to the point where it is impossible. Even the P400 has matte black and photo black, but there's no grays. So it's not really suitable for black and white where you need linear neutrality all the way across. It may not be able to do that unless you have a really good profile made for that printer and that paper that you have. And so the R2000, the same thing. It's the same ink set, so it has that weakness of not having extra grays to be able to give you that ability to create nice gray transitions. Yeah, so not every printer can do that. Even the older, I have back here a 430. It's out of the camera's view. A 340. I'm sorry. Again, the same ink set as the 1400. It is 6-color dye system, just one black. That printer cannot produce black and white prints. It produces black and white brown prints. That's what it does. Now, unless I, produce a really good profile for it, it just doesn't do it. It just can't. So don't be surprised when that happens to you. It's just inability of the printer to be able to do a nice neutral print. Somebody here has a dilemma. They bought a Pro 100 and it makes wonderful prints. So you may ask, what's the dilemma? Let's go ahead and jump into the rest of the conversation. So he says, yes, I know it's been said that you aren't going to, if you're not going to print a lot, don't buy a printer. Yeah, but see, we can't help it. Those printers are being literally given away $100 net, and you get a free box of paper. That's $49.99. You pay like $50 net for that printer. Why should you not get it, right? Well, because then you're not going to use it enough. So this is the point of this comment right here. However, when I do, he says he doesn't use it a lot. I like having full control over the output. That's why he bought it. So even though he doesn't print often, he likes to have full control over the output of the printer, and of course, not having to deal with a lab back and forth until everything is cleaning. Everything is printed perfectly. So, what is he complaining about? My question is, if I let it sit for a month or possibly longer, will I have problems with clogged nozzles or dried ink on the printhead? Probably, yes, of course. Depends on your environment. If you live in a very humid tropical environment, more than likely not. It will not dry up. You leave a drop of water on your tabletop and it stays there for a week. You know what I mean? So 98% humidity levels, ambient, your printer will be fine. But if you live in Arizona, where the humidity levels are going to be very, very low, more than likely, yes. So again, it's up to your environment as well as, certain other factors. Should I print something, anything, on a regular weekly basis? Yes. Why don't you just print images? What good is it to print a nozzle check or a purge sheet? What does that get you? Nothing. A print of a nozzle check or a print of a purge sheet, and not something like this. Okay? This is what you should be printing. This is what you got that printer for. Yeah, this is hardcore, okay? But it's the truth. Please, folks, don't let your printer sit just because, oh, I don't have enough work for it. Then don't get it. Just don't get it. But if you do get the printer, enjoy the fact that especially this printer, the Pro 100, you can switch over to Precision Color Signature Edition ink extremely easily. You will not see any difference in your output. Okay, many people here on the chat have already done that, and they can just tell you. Just don't hear it from my mouth. They will tell you they did not see a difference as they were transitioning, whether it was completely like I did or gradually. They saw no difference. They're still printing with their drivers. Isn't that amazing? So why would you not want to print? Hello? Yeah. Why would you not want to print? First of all, you're paying about a sixth of the original price, even more sometimes, depending how much volume you order. So why not? Why not print? In fact, if you're a photographer, I'm sure you have thousands of images in your hard drives. Start printing those images. Start having fun. You can now do it and not worry about ink cost. Sure, spend a little bit more money on good papers. You'll be amazed at what you can get on the Pro 100. It's really, truly a great printer. Okay? It will not run a 60-hour cleaning cycle. It gives you an extra 60 hours, 120 hours. So like every 5 days, whenever you print a job, every 5 days, that job that exceeded that 120 hour threshold will be preceded by a cleaning cycle. It's not a big cleaning cycle. It's not like your pigment printers cleaning cycle. It's a much smaller one. It's dye inks. Okay. It doesn't need to do a more lengthy cleaning cycle because dye inks don't produce as much residue as the pigment inks do when they are being printed with. Remember, thermal printers, they explode the ink, they boil it, and boiling leaves residue. Okay, so that's why you need those cleaning cycles every so many hours. Okay, with pigment it's 60 hours. With dye ink Pro 100 it's 120 hours. Okay, so what should you do between hour 0? You printed something, it ran a cleaning cycle, and it did that for your own good. So your print comes up perfect. You got a whole 5 days to produce as many prints as you want without one of them generating a cleaning cycle. Why would you not take advantage of that? I just don't know. I just don't know. Especially printing with inks that are about a 6 to even higher, less than OEM. Okay? Again, to me it's incomprehensible. I just don't even understand that. And guess who answered here? Eli. He's with us tonight. He says that he hasn't used his for 2 months. Shame on you. But again, he has not experienced any problems. That printer is extremely forgiving. Okay. So even though I don't recommend not printing for 2 months, because the next time you print, your cleaning cycle will be quite large, even for the Pro 100, because you exceeded 480 hours. That's the maximum other window. And so again, you're taking a chance. Again, it depends on your environment. On a really dry environment or an extremely highly air-conditioned room or running a dehumidifier that dries the air, yeah, you may have a greater chance of a physical clog occurring from lack of printing as someone in a more humid, normal environment, the same amount of time, without printing. I call it neglect, but it's really, maybe we shouldn't call it that, but you know what I mean. So it all depends. Environmental conditions have something to say about whether, 2 months is too long or it's okay. Just go ahead and do it. Nothing will happen. It just depends. Okay. So Eglow, Eglow, not nervous owner of the Pro 1000. So he says that the clean cycles issue. I do not experience that every 60 hours. We should regard the inconceptions. Wait a minute. I do not experience. How could you not experience that? I think that's misworded. Um, he says that's just part of the maintenance for the printer. Henry Stoffel, let's see, he's got a Pro 100 dye ink lifespan. Okay, so the recommendation for lifespan, and I brought a bottle out here with me. This is that new dye ink, which, by the way, the differences are so small, but they're there. He's going to go ahead and begin to incorporate this into all new CLI 42 PC 42 SE ink orders after October. Okay, so if you guys own right now the current ink set, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Just continue printing. The next time you order, you will receive the new inks. Right here, there is an expiration date. Okay. I don't know if you can see that. Maybe out of focus. But what it says is 9/1/2021. You might say, wow, that's a lot of time. That's like 2 years plus. Well, that's 2 years before you open the cap and pierce that seal. Once you do that, that's it. That lifespan is gone. Okay, so now you have between, let's just say max, just to be safe, a year. You got about a year to use this ink. That's a good ballpark figure. Okay. Again, it just depends on how careful you are. I said in my video that every time you have if you have, say, an 8-color printer and you have 8 syringes with 8 needles, you got to wash all that stuff every time you use it. Tap water is not clean. Okay. And, we're covered with fungal spores, and this is what will affect dye ink the most. So every time you stick that needle in there to draw some ink out, you're basically inoculating whatever was on that needle into this liquid here. So what I suggest, of course, is a squeezy bottle with the needle attached and a cap. And then you just use an alcohol pad and clean that needle every time you flip that little bottle upside down and inject some ink into that cartridge. That's what you should do. When you're filling one of these up, make sure that you are using an alcohol pad to also clean the opening where you fill. And that keeps the process clean. And that will increase the likelihood of your inks lasting well beyond a year. Actually, they say 6 months from the time you open this bottle. In other words, I open it up. Notice there's a seal on the top, and I already severed it. See that hole? So I already broke the seal. Now that 2-year so-called use before date, that doesn't apply anymore. Okay? And the same thing goes for pigment inks, although pigment inks are not as susceptible as dye inks. Okay, they all have a biocide in the liquid base. The liquid base basically is the same for both pigment and dye, as far as I know. I may be wrong, though. It wouldn't be the first time. So this base has a biocide. Basically, the job is to sort of keep in check any kind of external biological contamination that you introduce in the bottle. It'll just kill everything you introduce until the point where the half-life of that biocide just goes down. In other words, the efficacy of that biocide will drop gradually. And when it reaches half-life, meaning it's only half as effective, then you could have problems. Okay. So the idea being just use up that ink. You just bought ink that's going to reduce your ink cost tremendously. So now there's no excuse for any one of us not to print, right? Enjoy that. Enjoy that. You got about a year to do that. Use up all this ink. And then if you only use half of it, then don't order a 4-ounce bottle next time. Only order a 2-ounce bottle. Order only as much as you will use within 6 to 12 months, okay, of normal printing. All right, so Eagle says, no, I do not have cleaning cycles every 60 hours. How do you not have cleaning cycles every 60 hours? Okay. I and everyone I know that has a pigment Canon printer has them. What have you done to not have any cleaning cycles every 60 hours? Okay. That I would love to know. Okay. So if you have that to share with us, please do so while you're here. That would be awesome to hear. Charles Nick says, I hope you realize how lucky we are to have Jose. Well, I don't know. I don't know about that. I don't know about that. I have upset quite a few people by simply telling them the truth. So, um, if you guys think you're lucky for having me, then I appreciate that. And again, you know me. I will always tell you the truth, or at least what I know to be the truth, until I am proven wrong. Sometimes I prove myself wrong, and then I make a retraction, and I tell you where I went wrong and how to solve that. Spike597 says, have any Canon Pro 1000 updated to the firmware version 3.01? I understand Canon increased the paper length to just over 47 inches. I have not done it. I am going to do it and just cross my fingers that nothing happens to the ability of the printer to still recognize my so-called ARC chips, my ARC chips that I got from Precision Colors. I know they will not work. They will not reset, but at least I want them to continue to be recognized until one of them goes empty. Then what I will do is just order some single-use chips from them, from Precision Colors. So Eagle says, I don't know why, but I do not get a cleaning cycle. I'm paraphrasing here. Every 60 hours, European printer from Pro 1000. Well, maybe there's just something about your particular firmware. Who knows? 2.06 firmware. I believe that's the one I have, if I remember correctly. So anyway, he also says 47 inches? That's almost 120 centimeters. Yes, that's what they claim. So I know that Precision Colors is going to go ahead and upgrade their Pro 1000 to that firmware. And then once they give me their okay, that it works with the current batch of chips that we are using, then I will go ahead and do that to mine as well. And we'll see. We'll just see where we end up. Okay. Hopefully that'll be great. Again, I really don't need to print 47 inches in that printer. I got a P800 with a roll adapter. I can print 127 inches long on that printer. So I really don't have a need for that. But again, if it works, that'll be, at least you won't be hearing rumors. You'll be hearing it from me that it does work. And the quick way to test that is to try to create a custom paper size in your driver. If all of a sudden it doesn't reject you anymore, then you'll know that it works. And then you need to buy a roll of paper and then cut something 47 inches long or a little bit longer and feed it carefully from the back and see if it will indeed print a nice panorama for you. Mike Cofferin from Dublin. Thanks for sharing your knowledge and experience, Jose. Canon 10s running through my original inkset. Any preference between third-party suppliers? Well, since you are in Europe and in Ireland, I believe, I would go ahead and order your supplies from octoinc.co.uk. Okay, just look for Octo, like octopus, octoinc.co.uk. And that's Martin. He runs that company. Again, it's a one-man company, just like Mike Lee from Precision Colors. And just go ahead and order from them. And you should be very happy with those inks. I would tell you to use Precision Colors, but they don't ship overseas hardly anymore. If you can use a drop shipper that's available on their website, but you can just get it directly from the UK. It's a lot easier, and I think you pay less for taxes anyway. Heartbeat Production says, what else is added, changed in that update? I have no idea. It really doesn't really give you much information. If our buddy Rusty Nelson is still here, maybe he can shed some light. I don't know whether he has updated to that yet. But if you are still here with us, go ahead and contribute to us any experience you might have with that particular firmware update. Let's see, we're getting a lot of new entries here on the Facebook. So let me see if there's anything new that we can add one more person. Yep, we just did that. So now we're up one more. Alrighty, so I think it's time. Yeah, we've been on for 1 hour, and I've been dragging along and avoiding that subject, and that's why I haven't made that video yet, because this is exasperating in a way. The Pro 1000 is one hell of a printer. It is. Whoa, Brenda Harding from Hawaii. All right, nice to have you. Let's see. Yep. 3 ladies with us tonight. Wonderful. She said, I had to track you down. Was looking on Facebook. Yeah. No, I don't do Facebook Live. We do it in right here in good old YouTube. Heartbeat Productions says, so if I want to use 17 by 12 in the Pro 1000, how do I do that? Well, you would have to create if you want to use a 17 by 12 cut sheet of paper, you would have to create a 17 by 12 custom paper size. Okay? You do that in the driver. Hey, why don't I just show you guys how to do that now? Since you're right here, we'll go ahead and do that in front of you guys. So let me go ahead and go over to the screen display. We'll go to my control panel. And we'll open up. What printer did you want? Pro 1000. Okie dokie. Not a problem. Pro 1000. I'm on a Windows machine, so I'm going to right click, printing preferences. We're going to close that window up. And so now we have the driver here. And so here in the paper size, you click on it, you go all the way to the bottom. I don't know if you can see that at all, but it'll be, let me move this over here so you can see it possibly a little bit better. All the way, it's going to still be out of your picture. So you're going to go to the bottom and click on custom, and you will get this. And simply you just enter the width. So remember, you got to print in portrait mode. So that would be a width of 12. So you enter 12.00 and a height of 17. And then just hit OK. And that would be it. That's all you have to do. When you then open up you apply, and say if you were actually on Photoshop or Lightroom or whatever you're going to use to print through, then it will actually show you that. So why don't I just use, say, QImage? This is a little bit easier. We'll open up QImage real quick here. I'll do the same thing I just did, but through QImage. So here we are, and we'll pick the Pro 1000. Boom. And right now I got a 17 by 22 paper size, and I got a cell that's smaller, a cell specifically, a specific size, of course. So we're going to hit properties, and it doesn't matter what paper we got chosen, but I'll go ahead and pick a luster paper and see 17 by 22. I'm going to go to custom, and we'll enter 12.00 by 17.00. We'll hit OK. And OK. So now we're in poster size. So now you want to print. What did you say you wanted to do? You said you wanted to do a 11 by 14. So you go over here to prints. You go to custom. Or I believe that they do have an 11 by 14 here possibly. Here we go. 11 by 14. There you go. That is your cell. So if I was to load this image, say one of these images here that I had, this is from our daughter's trip to New York. There you go, an 11 by 14, centered equally on a 12 by 17 inch paper. Okay, I would then load that pre-cut 12 by 17 inch paper in this orientation. In other words, vertically, or what is referred to as portrait mode. That would be the easiest way. I love QImage specifically for this type of work. Use a Mac. Sorry, I don't use a Mac. So the details of your driver will be totally different than mine. And again, that is the problem. So once you set up your 17 by 12, you create your cell size either in, not in Photoshop. That will not allow you to do that. But in Lightroom, that allows you to do that. You can then fit any image to 11 by 14 cell size, which will be centered within 17 by 12. Now, you could go ahead and crop to 11 by 14 and then just have it center, okay, onto your 17 by 12 so-called custom size that you create inside the driver. Keep in mind that the minute you close down and you're done with that operation, the next time you want to come back and redo that, you have to create a brand new custom size again. The only application that I know at this point is QImage. They will allow you to save that job that you created with the special settings, paper size, custom paper size, cell size, all of that is saved as a job. You can just recall that job every single time. Okay, you don't have to redo that custom paper size. You just don't have to. All right, so let's go ahead and take a break from the chat. We'll begin our little discussion here. And again, grab some coffee, do whatever you want to do, but you can walk away. It doesn't matter as long as you're hearing me. We're going to talk about the Pro 1000. So we'll go back to my beautiful face right here. We're going to introduce you guys whether you own one right now or you do not. You're maybe considering buying one. Boy, Facebook is busy tonight. Let me go ahead and close that up. All right, Pro 1000. All of a sudden, after the Pro 1 came out, the Pro 1 was simply a 13-inch capacity printer that decided to give us a 12 color ink palette. In other words, 12 cartridges this size, 39 milliliter cartridges, which is nothing to sneeze at. But imagine at 40 some odd dollars per cartridge, that's 12 times 12. That was a bit steep. So that printer again behaved just like the Pro 10. You had a user installable printhead, just like all Canon printers do. It is thermal type based printer, and so it has its own idiosyncrasies, if you will, that we have to kind of grow with and learn how to accept and put up with, let's just say. So simply put, per 1000. Officially 17 by 22 is the official capacity. That means that if you look in those drop-down menus, you will find maximum 17 by 22 paper size. Okay, that is considered a standard size. What standard size means is that if you wish, for whatever reason, to print borderless, you can print borderless on any standard size, not custom size. Okay, custom sizes that you create manually cannot be printed onto in borderless mode, period. All right, so what kind of media can it handle? Well, it can handle just about any kind of media intended for inkjet photo printers. Okay, that means your common, resin coated papers, your matte papers, your high quality fine art papers that are not resin coated, 100% rag, 100% cotton, burrito based, even some of the bamboo type papers, and even canvas papers. Canvas actual media made out of real canvas that has been coated for inkjet printing. It has an 11 color ink palette. What about the 12th? Well, the 12th is your clear chroma optimizer. And why is that necessary? Well, the reason it is necessary is that unlike dye inks, okay, dye inks will basically sink right into the ink coating, the inkjet coating. And by virtue of the fact that they do not cause a change in the texture of that coating, because they're just liquid, nothing in there but liquid molecules dissolved in liquid. The liquid sinks in, the volatile portions of that liquid evaporate, and you end up with a dry print, but the surface has not been altered in any way. When you paint a wall with glossy type paint like you would use on a kitchen or a bathroom, that creates a very smooth, almost glassy or mirror-like, with hardly any microscopic bumps in lack of smoothness, in other words. So light is reflected off of it and it looks glossy. When you print, no, I'm talking printing. When you paint on the wall with a matte paint, what you end up with is a surface that if you look at it microscopically, it has a ton of little bumps, almost like fine sandpaper. So when light hits it, it just, those waves get refracted in all directions and you don't see a sheen. It just looks dull, matte. So when you use dye inks, you get a glossy result. When you use pigment inks, you get a not so glossy result, okay? Because of those pigment particles. Yeah, but you said that it sinks into the coating. No, it does not. Not pigment inks, okay? Pigment inks will be adhered to the surface. The liquid base does sink in, but not the pigment particles. So that changes the characteristics of the surface. In other words, like right here, there's no ink laid down. So this would be the original surface of the paper. Okay, well, yes, but enter Chroma Optimizer. So areas, let me just go back. Areas such as this bright red leotard right here, that would actually have a lot of pigment. And that would look, if it wasn't for the application of Chroma Optimizer, that would look almost matte if you really took a good close look at it, changing the angle of view. So in order to nullify that effect, in other words, you have to apply something that's going to smooth out all of those little microscopic crevices. So it doesn't look like sandpaper anymore. It looks like sandpaper that has been varnished over. Okay. So depending on the heaviness of the coat of varnish over that piece of 400 grit sandpaper, now you have a nice smooth glassy surface. All of the grit is submerged under that layer of varnish. That's what is happening here. The Chroma Optimizer is smoothing out, leveling out all of the microscopic irregularities of pigment that pigment inks leave behind. You may have heard of gloss differential. That's what happens. Each color has a different, shall we say, gloss characteristics. Okay, so you will have like a very uneven look to anything printed on any paper that has a shine to it. Matte doesn't matter, no problems. So enter Chroma Optimizer to help you smooth out that effect that occurs when you print on glossy, luster, satin, Barita, any paper with a sheen. When you print on matte paper, Chroma Optimizer is not utilized at all. Okay, so it's not needed. So now, unlike every single other lesser class, if you will, pen and paper, when you choose to use a fine art paper, for instance, and they tell you that it should be loaded through the fine art or so-called manual tray in the back. The reason you need to do that is because fine art papers traditionally are heavier, stiffer. They need a straighter pathway. Okay, they really cannot properly bend. If you load them from the top, it has a sharper bend that it needs to make, and they don't like that too much. So they tell you to load them from the rear or manual feed. That allows the paper to go into a straighter pathway. But the problem when you do that is that it's going to force on you a 30 to 35 millimeter border. Where is that border going to occur? Well, it's going to occur on the leading and the trailing edges. Okay, not necessarily the left and right edges. So what you may have to do is just add borders on the left and right to kind of take into effect that's forced, or to take advantage, if you will, of that forced border. So in this particular case, I have a pretty wide bottom border already. That was chosen by me. Pretty wide top border. So I just added extra matching borders on the right. Back in the olden days, this is this old school way to create a border. Same top, left and right, and 1.5 times wider border at the bottom. That was the old school traditional way to display prints. Things have, of course, changed. So if you don't want that, then what do? You have no choice. You have to accept that. And in some cases, you actually absolutely have to accept that, especially when you're printing on matte media, because matte black ink was not utilized if you just simply looked at the drop-down menu and chose photo matte paper. It's not going to use matte black ink. It's going to use photo black ink. And on matte paper, photo black is almost just dark gray. It's not going to produce a deep gray. You're not going to like the results. So in order to trigger the use of matte black ink, you have to use that rear feeding tray, the manual tray, which then forces that border and just kind of changes everything. But at least your matte medias, in other words, all your very fine, heavy matte papers that you would have to feed through that tray anyway, if you really want to take advantage of that matte black, you would end up with a border, whether you wanted to or not. There's no way you're going to be able to print with, say, like a 1/4-inch border all around. Absolutely not. You can't do it. But you can on the Pro 1000. Okay? You can actually disable that. You can disable the margin detection. So that is one huge, and I mean huge, advantage of the Pro 1000, the 2000, 4000, and higher. The Pro 1, Pro 10, Pro 100 do not have that ability. Okay, the Pro 100 doesn't need it because it doesn't use matte black anything. It's just one black ink. But the Pro 1, Pro 10 do. So again, this is huge. This is, enables you to print with whatever size border you wish, or if it's a standard size, borderless, which you cannot do otherwise. So that's really cool. Now, QImage, quite a few versions ago, allowed you to disable that. What? Yes, it allowed you to disable that on the Pro 1, the Pro 10, the Pro 100. Yes. So you can print on that rear tray those heavier papers that demand that particular feed location and not have to get that 35 millimeter border. Yes, whether it worked 100% or not, I did test it and it did work on a couple of the kind of printers that I have. I didn't test them on all my printers, but it does work. So that is a good thing about QImage if you're using a printer that is not a Pro 1000 or higher, because you can actually internally disable that demand for a wide trailing and leading edge border. Now, 17 by 22 is the official largest standard size that you can print on the Pro 1000. But you can go from 17 to like 26 something, 25 something. I think it was 25.6. I would have to go back and try to make a custom paper size. That would be the largest custom paper size that you can create. You can't do borderless with that custom paper size, but you could go beyond 22, maybe 3 inches more. Big deal. So you get a 17 by 25. That would be cool. Red River sells papers that are kind of pre-cut, a little bit larger than normal. And so you could, extract a couple of inches more. So you can have a more rectangular result from your 17-inch wide stock. Because 17 by 22 is almost like, 4:5 ratio, almost. So what do? Well, there's, like somebody mentioned, there's a new firmware that supposedly takes you up to 47-inch maximum length. Well, that's a huge welcome feature, because we thought they would never succumb to allowing us to, either via firmware or a new driver or whatever, to allow us to go beyond that standard full, that largest length. Pro 100 is the same thing, 25 point something is what it is. Pro 10, the same thing. Pro 1, the same thing. And Pro 1000 was the same thing. 2000 allows you to print on roll. So we thought, well, they're not going to ever permit us Pro 1000 owners to print what would be a panoramic type print. They would want us to buy a Pro 2000, of course. Spend the extra bucks, then you'll have the ability to print longer prints. Well, they went ahead and changed that. Okay. So I have not, like I said, I have not tested that. I'm teetering. I'm on the fence, if you will, about that, but I will very likely go ahead and download that and install it and just see what happens. Now, in the actual LCD or LED screen on the printer, you can go down, and I'm going to do a short video this coming week, show you how to access that. But the auto cleaning cycles can be adjusted from standard, whatever that means, to short. Okay. Again, whatever that means, I have no clue what that means. So it's not saying that they will be eliminated. No. Now, auto nozzle check can be turned off. What does that mean? Why would you want that turned off? Okay. The auto nozzle check works in tandem with that cleaning cycle, that time cleaning cycle. Remember, I told you that whether you print or not, or whether you print every 10 minutes nonstop, every 60 hours, unless you're Iglo, which apparently he doesn't have to do it, you will be preceding that next print job that exceeds that 60 hours or 120 on the Pro 100 with a cleaning cycle. Well, if you print every 10 minutes, you might think, why do I need a cleaning cycle? My print's not going to be clogged. Well, it's full of buildup. You need to clear that out regardless. So that's why. But the auto nozzle check simply is checking your nozzles, listen to this, and determine whether any of them clogged before you print. And if you do a print job, okay, and say you haven't exceeded that 60 hours, it may run a cleaning cycle because the auto nozzle check determined that some of your nozzles were clogged and required a bit of a cleaning or clearing out cycle. Why would you want to turn that off? especially on a fragile printhead like the Pro 1000, Pro 1, Pro 10, Pro 100 use. Thermal printers are very delicate, and you cannot print anything, close to images with a nozzle or two that are maybe clogged up. Okay, you have on the Pro 1000, I believe you have some redundant nozzles that can be brought into play. But why would you want to destroy a nozzle unnecessarily? Okay, so leave the auto nozzle check on and just don't worry about it. Let the printer do its job, and it will keep that printhead healthy, because any nozzles that may have clogged during your last print job and this print job, you don't want to print, okay, without a cleaning cycle taking place prior to that. Because if it detects nozzles that require cleaning, you have to run a clean cycle. You cannot print without that cleaning cycle. Those nozzles will burn up. And once you run out of redundant nozzles per channel, that's it. The printhead is dead. You have to replace it. It's not a cheap printhead. Okay, it's not. It is not. Okay, so be aware of that yes, you can go in there and tamper with some settings, but maybe you don't want to do that. You may not want to do that because you may cause more problems that you actually think you're solving. All right. You have a vacuum assisted paper advance. So does that mean that there are no pizza wheels like on the Epson printers? Maybe yes, maybe no. I have to actually look. I have to actually look inside the printer to see whether there are some pizza wheels like they are on the other printer. But I have not experienced any of those little tick marks that occur. It's like a little star wheel. They use it to actually prick the paper. And it's like a little tractor wheel like that. And it just pushes the paper out. Okay, very controlled. But on some types of paper, especially delicate surface papers like fine art burrito papers, you're going to have those little lines show up, especially on your dark areas, such as this. You're going to have pizza wheel, little tracks running across. You will not see them on your lighter surfaces, your lighter areas, because you don't have enough ink laid down it. You will see it on your dark areas. Because again, those surfaces, unlike this resin coated paper, tough surface. Nothing will happen to that surface. Okay. But the fine art papers, it will show up. Okay. So what can you do? Not much. Really not much you can do. You can adjust maybe the platen gap. You can adjust for tell it that the paper is thicker than it really is. Maybe yes, maybe not. But some papers just succumb to that. So having vacuum assisted paper advance means that your paper is going to be held flatter, which basically means less chances of head strikes, right? On upper tier printers, like the 2000 and up, you have a much stronger vacuum paper advance, okay? And so this is good enough, and you will hear it come on as you print. You will hear that noise come on as it's printing. It's really helping keeping that paper flat, but you're still relying mechanically on the advanced mechanism of the printer. It's not going to be it's not being sucked down and then advanced by vacuum. No. The vacuum is just keeping the paper flatter than it normally would have. If the paper had a slight curl, maybe it will bring it down to a more flat surface, and your head strikes will not occur as often as they would have normally. Okay? So it's not magic. It's just assisting in the ability to keep that paper slightly flatter. You might occasionally hear what sounds like a pumping action. Okay? And you wonder, well, this is happening for like a whole minute. Is it doing a cleaning cycle? Oh my gosh, I'm wasting all that ink. No, it's not doing anything but internally agitating your inks. Where are those inks that is agitating? It's not agitating the inks in my cartridge. Definitely not. There's nothing in here. This is just a container with a valve, a one-way valve. Okay, actually no, a two-way valve in this case, and that's it. There are no vents. There are no pipes, there are nothing is, if I take this out and take the valve out, cut the valve out, it's just a container. Exactly what you see here. Nothing internally. There's nothing mechanical inside, nothing at all. So where is it agitating this ink? Well, where do you think the ink would require, if you have any kind of inks, pigment, particles settling taking place? Where do you think that would be the most important area to resuspend that ink? Okay. And how does that happen? Well, if you don't print for like 6 months, yeah, the particles will begin to settle. Okay. Not only will that cause problems, it'll cause huge color shift problems, because your magenta will be like twice as strong. Your cyan will be twice as strong. Your yellow will be twice as strong, depending on what color settled the most. So what do you think is actually re-agitating this ink? There are internal compartments beyond this cartridge. Okay, this cartridge connects to a spigot. The spigot allows air to go in as ink is going out the other opening. It's serving dual purpose. It's really amazing. So as ink is being delivered to the ink lines, air is being delivered back into the cartridge. Otherwise, you would end up with a vacuum and no ink could possibly flow. So this is at normal atmospheric pressure at all times. Okay, it is not a pressurized system like the Epson printers, like the P800. That is a pressurized system. This is more of a gravity-fed system. So the ink goes into the ink lines and then it fills an internal compartment. And the ink is like a little swimming pool, if you will, for each color. And that has a cap on it, and it has an internal vent that actually vents to the outside. There are sensors in there, very sophisticated system, okay? Exactly what the sensors do, that is kind of secret. We really don't know exactly what they do, but they make sure that when that level of ink in that compartment drops a certain amount, then it activates the inlet system to allow ink to come out of this cartridge and replenish that. I think of it like a toilet bowl tank. The water drops, okay, and once a certain drop threshold is reached, water is allowed to come back in, and then it stops flowing. So that compartment is kept at a certain level constantly. It only drops so much before the printer senses that it needs to replenish ink into that reservoir. Well, if that reservoir content sits there for a while, because the next one is just a short line to the printer damper, and internally in the damper, that ink is constantly being agitated as the printhead does this. Okay? So no need to worry about that part. It's the stagnant ink in those compartments that is being agitated. And agitated by what? Little pistons. Okay, so that's what you hear. You hear like a pumping action. Don't worry, that's just the ink being agitated. In fact, thank your lucky stars that's actually taking place, because then your ink levels will remain the same. There is an adjustment in the Pro 10 that in the driver, something to do, it's kind of a weird name for this function. Like, I forget what it is, but basically that's all it is. It's going to cause the printhead to just do this. It's not going to lay down anything. It's just moving back and forth. Because on the Pro 10 cartridges, there's a little internal pallet inside the ink bag that's going to cause this waving action. As the printhead moves back and forth, that little pallet is going to do this, and it's going to agitate the ink that's inside the ink bag for you. Well, in the Pro 1000, there's no such thing, but there's an internal compartment, and inside there's a little piston that's going to agitate that ink internally. It's going to cause some circulation to occur, and that will maintain your ink density equal, whether it's at the top of the level of the compartment or the bottom. Okay, you don't want the bottom to be stronger than the top. You want the whole surface, the whole volume to be the same density, and that's what that does. So don't worry about that noise if you hear it. In other words, that was a long explanation for something simple. That's just the way I am. All right. if you get air, okay, say for instance, I'll give you a scenario where this can occur. Let me make sure that I am staying in topic here. All right. Yep. So here we go. So let's just say that you get air in your ink lines. And how could that possibly happen? Well, under normal operations, OEM use only. So I'm only using OEM cartridges. I buy new ones as I get near empty on any color. So I always have extra cartridges on the go, ready to go. So this chip reporting, okay? Here's the chip. It just floats inside. Hear it. You hear that? It just floats in there. So this reporting of ink is relying on the sensors in that internal compartment. As ink is being drawn out of that compartment, it knows exactly, I mean by a fraction of a milliliter, how much ink is being removed. Okay? By what? By you printing or even cleaning cycles taking place. So remember, I said that the compartment drops from full. It drops a certain amount. That amount is exactly the same every single time. So once it drops, it triggers this to allow ink to come out. Okay, not this itself, but the spigot system, the ink delivery system. So ink comes out and delivers, say, 5 milliliters. So it knows that 5 new milliliters of ink have been sent in, and it brought the level to the correct full level. So it keeps track of all of that ink perfectly. If you go empty, okay, when you go empty, not if, but when you go empty, the printer exactly knows that, yep, I already know that 80 milliliters of ink have passed through my system, have passed through my internal compartment, okay? It knows that. So it then sends a signal to the chip to write onto it that the cartridge now is empty and the ink levels drop on your indicator, on your driver, to empty. This cartridge is empty. Okay, it's not like Epson that'll still have like 10 ml of ink in it when it says it's empty, according to the chip. No, when this chip says it's empty, it has been told it's empty because of that extremely accurate measuring of the ink flow. Whereas Epson is more or less guessing, okay, how much ink has passed through the printhead by the little spitting of droplets of ink. It sort of figures out, okay, approximately this much ink. That's why you need to have a cushion of like 10 ml of ink in that cartridge. That's what Epson offers you. Every time you throw away an Epson cartridge, you're throwing away 10 ml of ink on a P800, for instance. Okay, believe it or not. Yes. So with this one, when the chip goes empty, this cartridge is empty. So what if, let me paint you the scenario. What if you're now deciding to continue refilling these? Okay, just like Ink Owl tells you to do. Take your cartridge, fill it by using the vacuum method. It's a special filling method with 80 ml of ink. That will bring you back to full factory volume. You pop it back in, but the chip still says you're empty. Okay, so now you're going to disable ink monitoring. You will see that option in your screen. So you disable ink monitoring, you will not be able to see from now on the levels of matte black. Now you're running blind, okay? And you say, oh, no problem. I'll just take the cartridge out every once in a while. I'll give it a shake, see if there's any ink inside. Well, it's better if you weigh it, especially if you know what a full one weighs and an empty one weighs. So you gotta kind of blindly keep track of your ink usage, okay? Because your indicator is no longer working. So now you've gotten to the point where all your 12 cartridges have been turned off, if you will. No ink monitoring is taking place. You really have no idea how much ink is inside any of your 12 cartridges unless you weigh every single one every once in a while. Okay. Here's where it gets interesting. You have to constantly top these off. Okay. Now, since this is empty, I know for a fact that I can load up. This is a 100 ml syringe. I can load up exactly 80 ml and inject that back and forth using the vacuum method or the pressure method. Both of them work. You want to know what I'm talking about? Look at Precision Colors videos or my videos, Pro 1000 refilling. Okay, so look at those and you will see what I'm talking about. So you have exactly the correct amount of ink to put in. But now you have no way of knowing that this cartridge may be nearing physically being empty. What do? Okay, say it's a third full. You got to take it out and you got to weigh it. You better know what an empty one weighs. So when you weigh it, or you better know what a full one weighs as well. So you weigh it and it weighs X amount. So you subtract that weight from the full amount, and then you have to kind of do a little math and figure out how much ink can you actually fit, because you cannot force too much ink in here beyond the 80 ml. You'll have a geyser when you remove this. You'll have a fountain of ink spewing out all over you. So if the balance of your math deduction is, say, 44 ml, that's what you better load. So see, it's going to be very inconvenient for you to do the proper topping off. And why do you want to do that? Because if you actually physically run out of ink, then there's nothing here. Guess what's going to enter the lines? If this was an Epson printer with refillable cartridges that have no airbag in them, you would introduce air in the ink line, and there's no way to vent that air out of an Epson P800 or 3880. Okay, there's just no way. Even the R3000 or the P600. Once you get air in those lines, you are basically screwed. So you have to run a very large cleaning cycle or a full ink recharge again. In other words, just like if you were initiating the printer, a lot of ink will be wasted. Yes. You cannot just choose that one channel that has air. All of them have to be cleared out, whether they needed it or not. The Pro 1000, remember I told you that each one of those compartments is vented to the atmosphere. So even if you get a little bit of air in those lines, okay, if you don't catch it in time and, oh shoot, I went empty and I printed some prints. Well, you may have introduced air in those lines. Quickly refill it, pop it back in. Continue printing, don't worry, because you have a reservoir, a secondary reservoir of ink. And that will eventually reach a certain point. It will trigger that replenishing sensor, and ink is going to start to flow. Air is going to be pushed in. Air will then be vented out, and that compartment will fill up to the full level. That second sensor will say, hey, I'm full. Stop allowing ink to enter. You see? And you're still complaining about the Pro 1000? The level of technology built into this printer is ridiculous. Okay? You should pay $1,000 more for this level. Okay? Really. And it's not because I'm a big fanboy of it. I mean, I get ticked off at the things that it does because it has to, because it knows darn well none of us are going to perform those maintenance because we consider them wasteful, but they're necessary. They're just necessary. All right. Ability to create custom paper and media configurations that appear in the driver paper choices. Oh boy. Let me show you. There's a catch to this. You can only do so many. It's not like you can do, hundreds of these, okay? You can only do so many. I'm going to go ahead and load up the Pro 1000 driver once again. I have a video. It shows you exactly how to do this. Okay, look it up. Check out the Pro 1000 playlist. I have lots of videos in there. If I haven't answered your question, it probably doesn't exist, okay? But I'm sure there are other things that that I did not cover because, like that new firmware, for instance. All right, so here we are. I'm going to go ahead and hit my media type. I have it set for matte photo paper. Now see, this setting on a Pro 1, Pro 10 will not use matte black. You have to go to Fine Art and then choose Premium Matte, and that will trigger or Photo Paper Pro Premium Matte A, whatever that is. Any of these papers that use matte ink finally will be triggered, but all is not lost. The Pro 1000, when you choose photo matte paper, in this particular paper choice drop down, not the Fine Art, will trigger the use of matte black ink. Finally, yes, finally. And then you can go ahead and I believe it's down here on print options. You can say let's see, disable, cancel the safety margin regulation for paper size. That's it. You keep that on all the time, and you will no longer be pestered about that particular enforced border, if you will. Okay. Let's go ahead and drop down to the bottom where I have something called customs. So I have Palo Duro etching, San Gabriel Burita, Aurora Art Natural, Aurora Art White, Blanco Matte Canvas, Palo Duro Semi-Gloss Rag. These are all custom-based paper choices. And as you saw, they actually show up. That's unheard of, because normally the only thing that will show up on your normal drop-down menus are papers made by who? By Canon, for Canon, not from other manufacturers. So that's one thing that you can do. Use the media configuration tool. It's a little bit daunting to set up properly and use, and there are tricks. But again, I have a couple of videos that cover that. So make sure you search for that. All right, next amazing feature about the Pro 1000. The ability to plot and keep track of your printing expenses, including paper ink and even waste ink generated. That is done by the accounting manager. So let me go ahead and, I don't know if I loaded it this time. Remember, I had my computer rebuilt just not long ago. Well, here we go. So let me show you. These are all the jobs that I have run through the Pro 1000. Check that out. Okay. Again, it's like a huge spreadsheet on what you do without getting into the details of this, because you can look that up on YouTube, Accounting Manager. It'll tell you how to use it in most cases, but it'll give you information that is derived from you entering the cost for like a full cartridge of yellow. Chrome Optimizer is actually cheaper than the actual colored inks. And so you enter all of these values, then enter all of your paper costs. And because it knows exactly how many square inches of paper you printed on, it will then produce a job report that will tell you how much it costs to produce this particular job, whether it's one print or whether it's 10, 17 by 22 prints. And so it will tell you the total cost. Also, there's another way to access a total use of ink. In other words, this will only give you the ink used for print production. Okay, so you will not see ink produced during cleaning cycles. There's a way to access that, but what it'll do, it'll give you the total amount of ink used, including total amount of ink used for actual print production. So I wish it would show you total amount of ink used in just cleaning cycles, but it simply gives you the total overall amount of ink used. But better than nothing. Okay. Okay, so you all know about the time, auto printhead cleanings and flushes. I don't have to beat that dead horse any longer. You know that they will occur regardless of what we do. After each printing, a short purging of the parking station occurs unless you have a subsequent print coming. In other words, what does that mean? As you know, all inkjet printers park their printheads over what they call a parking space station, a purge sponge, many names for it. And so what does that do? It is the location where vacuum can be applied to the printhead to suck ink out and then to flush it away. That's what the cleaning cycle does. So the printhead will park itself. There is a rectangular gasket made out of relatively soft silicone. And because of that, it's kind of fragile and you need to keep it in good shape. So that will seal against the printhead. And vacuum is applied and ink will be sucked out of all 12 channels. And then the printhead detaches itself, moves over to the left slightly, and then the pump is activated. And that's what you hear. That's what you hear when you're hearing a cleaning cycle. Okay. The cleaning cycle is not sucking ink out of the printhead at that point. It's just sucking it away from the purge sponge into the internal waste ink compartment or cartridge. In the Pro 1, Pro 10, Pro 100 is the ink pads that live deep in the chassis of the printer. But it performs the same operation. Printhead attaches, vacuum silently. You don't hear that. It's applied, detachment moves to the side. You have a pool of ink right here, and it is sucked away internally. That's what you hear. So after each print, and this is why you guys that have a Pro 1000, do not, I say, ever use it for making 154 by 6s. It's crazy. I'll tell you why. It's all about this situation. So after every single print, and there's two different scenarios here, okay? Again, it's all part of the way the Pro 1000s and higher work. So, oh, my eyes. Oh, anyway. So you print something, and as the printing process takes place, ink is passing through the nozzle plate. And at the end, there may be a situation where it finished making the last pass and there's a little bit of air aspirating itself into the printhead. So it will suck out of all 12 channels something like, I don't know what it is. It's a fraction of a milliliter of total ink. So if you're just making like 5 prints that are big, okay, that require maybe 4 to 5 milliliters of ink, total ink used, that's, 5 milliliters of ink, and maybe a third of a milliliter was used for that after the print, a little repriming, if you will, of the printhead. Well, the ratio is still on your side because you use more ink for your gorgeous print that you just created than what you wasted making sure that printer was kept, the printhead was kept primed. Also, think about it. If you do 150 such little prints, when you make a little 4x6, maybe you're using like maybe a third of an ml of ink total to print that. Well, you might be using the same amount of ink to purge that printhead afterwards. Now you're using twice the amount of ink. So this printer is not really designed for you to be making little prints. Get another small printer if that is your goal. Okay, do not use something designed for large prints for creating little tiny prints in multiples. It's just not economical. It really is not. And also, if you make a print on the Pro 1000, the Pro 1, the Pro 10, the Pro 100, and once it is ejected, the printer does not receive another print command within like 30 to 40 seconds. I haven't really timed it. It will run what to you sounds like a cleaning cycle, but really it's just purging the purge pad. It is sucking whatever was on that purge pad, because as the printer is printing, it'll go beyond the right edge of the paper and it will land on that sponge area. It's really a ceramic porous block but they call it a sponge because that's what it does. It allows ink to pass through. So it'll go over there and it will then be sort of wiped by the wiper. There's a little wiper blade that comes into play. Well, that sponge is collecting residue at all points, okay, of ink. And so if you do not print something, or in other words, if I do a print job and I tell the printer to produce 5 copies of that image, then as soon as one comes out, it's going to prep itself for the next one and the next one and the next one. But if I only print one and nothing comes to the printer, a command to print for the next 30 to 40 seconds, it's going to then tell it, hey, go ahead and clean that purge pad before Joe decides to print something else. Because I just sat here waiting and about 40 seconds passed and nothing else came. So I assume he's going to take a break. Okay. However long that is. So make sure you clean that purge pad. That's what it's doing. So it's another preventative measure that it performs. There's nothing worse than a purge pad that is gunky and dirty with accumulated ink. Epsons are notorious for that. And you have to clean them all the time. That's the biggest culprit in laying down smudges of ink all over the surface of your paper, your beautiful print, especially if you're using a sheet of $10 paper. You don't want that to happen. Pro 1000 takes care of that. Pro 1, Pro 10, Pro 100, even the lowly Pro 100 takes care of that for you. So that purge pad is always clean, okay? Again, it doesn't have to do it if you have subsequent print jobs coming, okay? In Q image, I could load 10 images, load them up on a queue, and produce 10 prints, one after the other. That's what I did with these. These were all produced in Q image for my Pro 100 ink test. Let me get all of these here so you see what I am talking about. All of these prints, all of these prints were printed consecutively. So the Pro 100 did not run a single purge pad cleaning until the very last one was printed. It didn't have to. It was clean. It kept itself clean. But it's just a preventative measure. It says, well, you might be clean, but I'm going to make darn sure you're actually physically clean. So I'm going to run that little purge cycle at the end where it's going to suck away any kind of residue that built up during printing, okay, whether it needs it or not. Does it waste something? In most cases, hardly anything. It just sounds really wasteful, doesn't it? And it scares you to death, yes. But it really is not doing anything evil, okay? There's also a small flushing. I just did that, yeah. So do not print like hundreds of 4x6s. That's not really good. The ink cartridges are not pressurized, so remember that. They are vented internally by the ink delivery spigot, and the reservoirs are also vented to the atmosphere. So again, any air that accidentally gets in is vented out, okay? And that little reservoir, that tank, just like your toilet tank, is constantly kept at the correct operating volume. If it drops a certain amount, it's not a lot. It doesn't let it drop a lot, okay? It will drop some, and immediately that sensor says, hey, I'm a little below, okay? Start feeding me some ink. Come on, give me some ink. It will raise that level back up, and any air that may have come through, gurgling through, will be vented out, okay? If more air got in, then it'll just simply keep asking for ink until you push that air out. So you will not have the problems that you could encounter when using refillable cartridges on Epson printers, because refillable cartridges have to be kept primed. They cannot be allowed ever to reach empty, okay, physically. So you got to top them off. The last thing you want is an empty cart, lost its prime, and now air is getting in. There's no ink bag. Okay, these cartridges do not have an ink bag. So air is just going to get in. On an Epson OEM cartridge for the P800, air will never get into your ink lines, ever. Okay? Ever. In fact, when it is empty, that ink bag is not even collapsed yet. It still has 10 ml in it. All right? So all of these fail-safe measures for you. And I don't even know half of them. Okay. This is only what I know. Okay. Whew. I love that printer. Now, one of the things that you have to keep aware of, it has this auto leveling system underneath. Okay. So what it's going to do is, even if your table is slightly off balance, in other words, if you were to lay a level down and it's just a little off, when you originally set your printer down, there's a lever underneath that will just do this, and it will measure how off you are from a certain angle. And so that internal reservoir is never going to be primed during the original priming process beyond a certain amount, because it's going to take into account that you may be half a degree off. Okay. Yes, it is that intricate. So it's going to always fill itself up to a certain level. It's not going to go beyond that, because beyond that would then overflow. So what can't you do? You cannot be carrying that printer from place to place on its side. You'll have ink everywhere. Okay, that's one of the negative parts of it. Things about it, you can carry a PA100 upside down if you want to, sideways, it doesn't matter, but not a Pro 1000 or larger, because you're relying on that vented internal compartment. So when you're ready to send it in for servicing, you have to run the emptying of those compartments. You have to. So also, if you're going to move it and you cannot, assure yourself that you can carry that as level as possible to your new location, you're going to have to empty it. That will cost you a ton of bucks, okay? A ton. But what does this printer have that no Epson printer that I know of have? At least not the prosumer versions. An internal densitometer. Incredible, right? So during your initial installation, most of us, all we have to do is, on a Canon printer, install the printhead, install the cartridges, or maybe the cartridges first and the printhead second if it's a stationary cart printer. Depending on what type it is, that will reverse the order of installation. But basically, you're just gonna, fill the printhead with ink. If you have stationary cartridges, the ink lines, printhead dampers, and so forth. Then you test to make sure that you have a correct nozzle check, 100%, head alignment, and that's it. Then you print a standard image. Where's my standard image? And hope for the best. Okay? Okay. I don't know where I put. Oh, here it is. And hope for the best. Okay? That's it. And if you get a correct rendering, and you'll be able to look at this and go, hey, wow, this looks really, really good. I'm amazed. And now you make sure that your monitor displays the same result, neutral, okay, neutral, and approximately the same brightness. It's not going to ever be perfect because of the backlit system that we use in monitors. And this is just by reflective light. It's never going to match the way you see it on your monitor. That's a totally different display characteristic, if you will. So the thing is, just like cars, I got a Chrysler 200. So every single thousands of Chrysler 200s were produced. They all differ slightly, okay? They were put together by machines and maybe, some handwork, whatever, but none of them are identical. None of them. They're always going to be slight. Some are going to be more lemony, and some of them are going to be more toward perfection, what the factory so-called specs say they should be. But the same thing with printers. So all of these Pro 1000s, they vary a little bit, okay? The factory OEM profiles were made to take into account these variables, okay? And I don't know what the level of plus or minus is allowable, but the ICC profiles that you get when you download your driver kind of take into account that slight difference, okay? So a custom profile, well-made custom profile, will always excel the OEM profile. Okay? They always will. Because you will be creating a profile for your particular unit, your particular batch of paper, and your particular batch of ink. Okay? Nothing. Whenever you make a cake, it's never going to be exactly the same way every single time. Okay? Just not going to happen. So, what if I'm Joe, and let's just say, I don't know, let's pick a guy here. Rick Johnson. He has a Pro 1000 as well, but he's in Illinois. I'm in the Washington D.C. area, and I want to send him some prints that I made, and I actually send him the image as well, and he printed it, but it doesn't match exactly the prints that I produce here, and I sent to him. So you can say, well, you need to profile. You need to create a profile, and then you can share that profile with him. Or no, you can't, because the profile that I created will be for my printer. Okay? And my printer's output is a little bit different than his printer's output. Can you see it with your human eyes? I don't know. Maybe yes, maybe no. But it does exist. It will exist. And the same thing with him. If he creates a custom profile, gives it to me, it would only work for his printer, not my printer. My printer's slightly different. His printer's slightly different. So the internal densitometer job is to calibrate each one of those Pro 1000s with Pro Luster paper, and it will then, you run that operation from the LCD screen. It will tell the printer to print some color patches. You never see this process taking place. It'll print some color patches. It will allow them to dry internally. It will then scan them with an internal densitometer, and it will then determine how off the reproduction of those values actually turned out on Pro Luster paper with OEM inks. It will determine, it'll say, oh, gosh, you're almost perfect, but not quite. So here are the adjustments you need to make. So it will make, if you will, an internal profile that will then install into the printer itself. Okay, not my computer, but the printer itself. And so now that printer, because it did that reference, it printed those patches and it referenced them with the densitometer, it will say, okay, now you're printing as close to factory specifications as was intended, but impossible to do, because otherwise they would have had to fill that printer with ink, every one of them that they sell, and perform that operation, and then empty it, and then have you do it. What a wasteful process that would be, right? Impossible. That's up to you to do. So they've given you that opportunity by installing something that should be in a 2,000 to 3,000 to 4,000, even higher level printer, dollars that is, not a $1,300 printer. Absolutely not. I don't even know how they accomplished that, but they did. So now my Pro 1000, I can share with Rick. Okay, I can share my results with Rick. I can produce a profile with this baby right here, or this other baby right here, and then say, hey, Rick, do you use this paper? And Rick will say, yeah. Do you use OEM ink? Yeah, I do. Or do you use Precision Colors and Signature Edition inks? Or do you use Ink Owls? Or do you use whatever? It doesn't matter. As long as I use the same inks, he uses the same inks, we using the same paper, his is calibrated now internally, mine is calibrated internally. Both of our printers are outputting as identical outputs as humanly possible because we internally calibrated our printers. Had we not done that, then there would have been a difference between the two. You see what I'm saying? So now I can share whatever I can produce, he can produce. He can match whatever I produce, I can match whatever he produces. That's the whole thing. Is that really necessary to do? Of course it is. Whether you're actually sharing with Rick or not, it doesn't really matter. You need to bring your printer to a standard. And here's why. A day doesn't go by where I don't hear from someone saying, I'm using, a custom profile from this company who, from whom I bought some paper. And they got this profile for this paper and my Pro 1000 and OEM inks. Okay. And I'm not liking the results. They're not as good as my other printer. Well, it could be the profile. It could be the fact that your printer is that slightly off. And so that other profile was created by another copy of the Pro 1000. You see what I mean? So unless that printer and your printer was calibrated simultaneously, no way. No way. Even if that other printer that they used to create that profile with was calibrated, yours is not. Okay, you see what I'm saying? So yours is not, and therefore it's going to be invalid. Okay, it's going to be invalid. So, wow. You see what I'm saying? There's a lot to this printer. A lot to this printer. Internally, there are tons of sensors that, they measure the edges of the paper. They measure the front edge of the paper to make sure it is actually 90 degrees to the side edges of the paper. Oh my gosh, they measure the size of the paper. They know what the size is. And so if you have a mismatch, it will then report that to you that there's an error. Yeah, say you choose 8 by 10 and you put an 11 by 14 sheet of paper. It's going to see that. It's going to sense that. So, yeah, let's see. My last item here, I think I already covered. It was about the way that the chips are able to so accurately report ink levels. And it's because of those internal compartments. So that is it in a nutshell. I'm going to have to repeat this on video. And I'm going to finally do this week, hopefully. So what do you guys think? What do you guys think about this printer now? The Pro 1000 is even, the Pro 2000 is even more sophisticated because it has the ability, from what I have been told, I don't have one here, doesn't fit, to load 2 types of roll paper at the same time. It's an adapter you have to buy extra, okay? And it's not cheap, but it allows you to have 2 sources or 2 different types of media loaded. And they are easily interchangeable. I think by just choosing the other paper choice, it'll retract one and load the other one for you. Wow. Come on. And it does have a cutter built in, so you don't have to worry about that front edge being crooked, like on my Pro 100. Sorry, P800. I use the so-called roll adapter, but all it's doing is printing a cut line, and I have to use scissors to cut it. And then when you hit that you're done, it'll retract it, but it will not retract it fully. Otherwise, it will never reload again. You would have to retrim that edge to true it up again so that the sensor on the print head will actually not reject it as being crooked or skewed. So let's go back to the chat and see where we are, where we left off before. A lot of comments were made during this presentation. That's good. All right. Heartbeat says, I use 17 by 14 now, but 2 inches on 100-foot roll adds up at the end. Yeah, I know. But what can you do? What can you do? Not much. That's just part of the cost. And you have to, if you're selling these final prints, you have to kind of incorporate that into your selling scheme. But yeah, there's no way to avoid that. I think QImage has intelligent printing when you're using roll mode. It does quite a bit of little magical functions for you to make sure that you're not wasting extra paper just blank, All right, Brenda Harding. How should a person price out making prints? Well, with the Pro 1000, you use that accounting software, and it tells you exactly what your costs are. Then you just add your artistic cost, whatever it costs you, whatever you think you're worth an hour, That's how you do it. You will know exactly to the penny how much each print costs to produce. You have to take into account any testing that you did prior to that final print and add that. Okay. But it will tell you, you saw my spreadsheet, it will tell you exactly what each job that you run through that printer costs to produce. Of course, it needs that data to be able to compute that. So you have to do a little bit of work and tell it what every one of those products that you're using costs, so that it knows how to compute it, because it knows exactly how many square inches of paper are passing through that printer at any one time. George Gab says Lightroom lets you save the custom print size as a preset. Yes, but not the whole job. What I mean by that is that QImage will allow you to do all of that, every single driver setting, every single layout, everything to do with your setting up to print that image, as well as the images. And it remembers their location. So when you then recall that job, it will pull out all of those images for you. Yeah, that's the magic about that. And so that's why I love QImage. I'm sorry, but if I produce something in Lightroom, I export it out to QImage through the plugin. That's just the way I work. That doesn't mean that you should work that way, but it's just the way that I work, and it's great. It's great. And if it's something that I know that I'm going to be redoing in the future, just like this test that I did, where I had to make 3 each, and they have to be done exactly the same settings, I save that as a job. Simple. I can recall that a year from now, and it will pull it out like that, regardless of what version of QImage exists at that point. So yeah, remembering the settings is just one aspect. Remembering every single aspect of that job, that's pretty involved, if you ask me. Yeah, Heartbeat says yes. CC, that I assume you mean Photoshop does that as well. However, the Pro 1000 will only print on their preset sizes. Well, yeah. Iglo says you might have to add the custom size to the paper choices in the printer driver on the computer. Yes. Heartbeat says I have a roll left over from my old Epson 4900, so I am cutting it into sheets, doing it 17 by 14 now, and would like to use 17 by 12 to save paper. You can do whatever you wish. Yeah, it's no problem. And she does have an iMac. Al Coons says Lightroom will allow you to save any custom template you make in the user templates. Yeah, templates, but not the templates and the images, as well as the driver settings and the printer that you used to print it on and the paper that you used to print it on. You get what I mean? Yeah, that's why I use QImage. Yeah. I love Lightroom for everything. Okay, I do all of my editing in Lightroom. I don't use Photoshop any longer. I just don't. I use Photoshop for anything that requires like graphics, but I use Lightroom 100% for all my image editing now. Then I export it over to QImage. Gregory Cross says, hello, this is Greg, just down the road in Rockville. Oh, man. Yes, we should. Let me tell you, I'm going to load my email address. You give me an email, my friend. We will definitely hook up. Let me make sure I type it in correctly. At yahoo.com. Okay, so here we go. You contact me right here, my friend, and we will get together for sure. Heartbeat says yes, but in the Pro 1000 it has to be a piece of paper at least 14 inches wide, otherwise it won't print. You mean you cannot load a 12 by 19? What do you mean? I don't think that's true. But again, you might be right. I really don't do anything odd paper sizes too much on the Pro 1000. George Gap says you can't print on 8.5 by 11. Um, I don't know who you're addressing that to, but sure, of course you can. The size needs to be saved in the printer, not in CC or Lightroom, etc. You need to know how to save that to the printer driver in a Mac. Okay, they're talking about that, so I'll let you guys discuss that among yourselves. I will go ahead and continue on. Let's see if there's anything new being discussed. Okay, so Stephen Polvoy, I am still wanting to find out if you can help me get 2 sets of CLI 42 clean so I can try to refill them with PC inks. I do not do that. I'm sorry, Stephen. I cannot offer that service to people because it's just too much. Now, Rick Johnson, right below you here, he will do that for you. And he's the guy that owns the eBay store that sells all of these already pre-modified, ready to use CLI, genuine CLI 42 cartridges. Let him do that for you. Roger Goof, I don't mean to be rude. That was not my intention. I just don't have the time to do that. Okay. I would have to give up watching my grandson. I would have to give up tutoring at school and all my other, community activities to even find time to just do a lot more videos rather than service type work. We have Rick Johnson. He's got the system down to, like a fine oil machine. He's much better than I. So he handles this. He sells perfectly, expertly processed sets of cartridges, and he will definitely do yours and then probably return you with a brand new set of his cartridges. Again, it's all about recycling here, and I think this is what he's referring to. So go ahead and take advantage of him. Go contact Rick Johnson. Right here is the contact. I guess that's the name of his email, his store on eBay. All right. JTS Golf from Southern California is here. Stephen Paulboy says, okay, Stephen, if you cannot find this site, it's right on my descriptions for my videos. Okay? Look at those. Watch a video, check out the description, scroll through the links after my video description itself. It'll be specific for the video, of course, but below that is a set of links, and one of them is for Rick's eBay store. Andrew Mantovani II is here from the Bronx, New York. Rick Johnson, Canon Pro 100 cartridge, modify, empty, flush, best plugs, storage clips. Yes, you need to have the proper storage clip. They don't come with the original cartridges. Those you can basically toss and get the correct ones from Rick. They're specific. Roger Guyord, anyone who has ICC profiles for HP Premium Plus photo paper? No, not really. Profiles for HP Plus photo paper and what printer? Okay, you see what I mean? Everything has to be specific. The combinations of printer, ink, and paper are specific. You could have many, many different combinations. You would need a profile for each one of those combinations. So we would need to know, like, what printer, what inks, and so forth. Okie doke. Okay, I'm sorry, Iglo. I have a hard time with names. I have to apologize for that. Anyone here have some transparent film printing on the Pro 1000? I have not. Or the adhesive vinyl film. I have not. And normally, I correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought that that type of work requires solvent ink type printers, but then again, maybe not. But I have not. So if anyone here has, go ahead and jump in. Okay, so Roger is talking about the Canon Pro 1000. You have HP Premium Plus paper. Is that a swellable surface paper by any chance? Okay, that is important. If it is, then forget it. You cannot use it with pigment inks. Okay, the old-fashioned swellable surface papers are meant for dye ink printers only. Okay, they do not perform well with pigment inks at all. So sorry, but I was just discussing that with Mr. Lee from Precision Colors. This is what I'm talking about. This is HP paper right here. I have it right here handy because it's great paper to use. This is let's see, made in Switzerland, and it is HP. You can see the back, the markings on it. Tell me if this is the type of paper you have. In the back, when you touch it, it feels like grainy. Okay, listen. You hear that? Whereas this paper, nothing, right? This paper, so it has a certain grain to it, and that is because when the ink is deposited on the surface, it swells up. It's made out of gelatin, and the gelatin swells up. The ink can penetrate, dye ink can penetrate and becomes encapsulated within that gelatin coating. And then once it dries, it contracts again back down. It dries nice and flat, because it will sort of swell up at different levels depending on the ink density, right? So dark areas will swell more than areas with no ink, like the edges. So these areas will not swell at all, and you can actually almost see like a little texture to the different densities, if you will. So once this dries, and that dye ink, which is not the best for longevity, okay, especially when you're using third-party inks. So this ink will become encapsulated in that layer of gelatin. Pigment ink will just sit on the top. Okay, it will not sink. So if this is the kind of paper, yes, you say the grain type, yeah. No, sorry, you cannot use it. Okay, you cannot use it. How much of it do you have, and what sizes? I mean, it just. What do you? What have you tried it on your Pro 1000? Let me know. Have you tried it, and how does it look? How does it look after it dries? Does it look like it should, like nice, smooth? In other words, does it look, the surface, does it look different than it did before you printed on it? When you look at a blank sheet, does it look different than it does after you print on it? So if I take a blank sheet, the surface needs to look exactly the same. It's hard to see, but that surface is nice and smooth, glossy, really beautiful. Okay, so when you print on it, it should not change. It should still look the same level of smooth glossiness after it has dried. Okay, and drying takes a while. And again, we were just talking about this because using paper like this on printers like the Pro 100, this is what okay. This was a little business discussion with Precision Colors the other day. Basically, what we were discussing is if he can get, Red River may be able to get some of this type of paper. Okay. Because for third-party refillers, especially those who print on the Pro 100, you would benefit greatly, and I will stress that again, greatly, by printing on that type of paper, but only on an ink, dye ink type printer like the Pro 100, and especially when using something like Precision Colors inks, which lack in the longevity side of things. They're perfect for a perfect transition between OEM and third-party inks, because you don't see a difference, but the difference occurs as far as longevity. It will last a lot less, maybe a tenth. Now, upstairs on my window door, facing my window, I got an OEM print of this. Again, remember this test that I did here? One is 2 standard images, 1 OEM ink, and 1 PC signature edition ink. Pro luster paper, which is not the best paper for longevity. So they've been sitting on my window. Let's see. I did it in August, I believe it was. So, no, earlier than that. Yeah. And so far, I don't see a difference between OEM and PC. Visually, I just don't see the difference. One of them should be turning brown by now, but I don't see the difference between the two. So far, so good. Maybe my conditions here are good. Okay. So I have not sprayed the prints in any way, shape, or form. They're straight out of the printer up to the wall. And so they're there, just getting a degree of light every day, every single day. Some days less, some days more, depending. And now the days are getting shorter. So, it's going to differ a little bit. But I'm going to wait a whole year and see what happens. See what happens. I should see like hardly any difference. In other words, if I was to then reprint that image, standard image, on a brand new piece of Pro Luster paper with the OEM inks or the Precision Colors inks, I should see some difference, because this is the one that just been printed, never been exposed to environmental conditions. And we'll see. If there is a difference between OEM and PC, then that's to be expected. If there's no difference, then that's going to be really unexpected. I do not expect that to happen, but we'll see to what degree will the PC results will fade. Now, sitting here on a pile, this is never going to fade. It'll be there. It'll be good for years without any kind of fading whatsoever. So, printing though with those signature edition inks and something like HP paper like you have will actually increase longevity many fold. How many fold? I have no clue, but many fold. These have been sitting here for I don't even know how long, and they look just as pristine as they did initially. Here's a shot that I did from my drone. And here's a standard image, of course, and it looks perfect. It just looks like nothing has happened to it. So, it's something that we want to try to kind of explore and see if he can get enough quantity, then he might actually sell this paper. And again, it's just going back in time, basically. This is what paper used to be like. Kodak paper, HP paper. Canon wasn't in the photo printing game yet. Epson wasn't in the photo printing game yet. HP and Kodak printers were the photo printers of 20 years ago. Okay. So, again, like, Roger, how much of this paper do you have? Let me know. And if, you're not happy, it looks different, you said. So, yeah, it's just not compatible. It is not compatible with, in fact, it may not be compatible with some even other types of dye ink printers, because the surface will not accept certain types of dye base liquid. In other words, it will act like oil and water. It will puddle. Okay, it will look like you printed on the back side instead of the front side. It will have puddling, and puddling is a weird effect that takes place when the droplets just begin to kind of coagulate, yeah, you know what I mean. They come together and form larger physical drops that you can then smear with your finger. Not good, right? That's not what we want. All right, so that's about it then for this discussion, I guess. Anything else? It's almost 8 o'clock, so we're getting close to the time. Maybe we'll cut it a wee bit short this week. I still suffer from sore throat problems. Again, it's just a matter of that flu-like condition I all of a sudden developed. My wife was the same thing. She actually had a fever just before we flew to Orlando, which is terrible. I mean, you don't want to go to Disney World and see family feeling like that, right? So let's see if there's anything at all that we can talk about. And then I'm going to show you, of course, I'm going to show you a drone video, but this is something that I did yesterday. It will be officially up on YouTube tomorrow. We're going to do a video. Basically, you guys already heard me talk about it. The Pro 1000, of course. We're going to do a video on colors that are out of gamut and why you can expect them to be printed on paper so that they look the same as they look on your monitor. It's just simply not going to happen. And again, that's just a matter of the physicality of the two systems. The way display images to you and the way printed images are displayed to you. And that's just simply the way it is. So this week, hopefully, I will be doing a little bit more aerial photography. And that should allow me to then make some prints like these. Let me see where I put it. Where did I put that big thing? Right here. This is on my street right here. This was done with the Para Anafi or Anafi. And again, you can see how beautiful that came out. And it's big. It's a 13 by 19. I did this on the Pro 100. And this was from a RAW file shot at 22 megapixel. So it's rather large resolution file. I mean, it borders in the 5,000 something by 3 something. These were done with the smaller, not as good drone. This was a test that I did on a special paper, but you can see that's pretty good quality. And this was done with a 12 megapixel drone, the Bebop 1. Bebop 1 or Bebop 2, I don't remember which one I actually used. And then these here, again, these are just examples of prints from drone cameras. There you go. Yeah, I got that one upside down, but anyway, so this will open up some avenues. I got a fountain that I want to shoot this coming week that should be really nice. I'll take some nice shots of that. And then it's all about coming back with those files off of the drone and then dropping them in my computer. We'll process them. We'll create some nice edited results. We won't alter them too much. And then go ahead and print them on our favorite printers, the Pro 1000, the Pro 100, and so forth, P800 possibly, and then show them off here to you guys to see. So you can see that it's not just earthbound cameras that work. This is not the only way. This is not the only way, folks. You can actually get up in the air and shoot just as good a result as you can. Of course, that affords you more manual control. So you better be good with your controller if you're flying on an area that you want to photograph. You're relying on your skill to position that instrument the way you want it. It will be the same as you changing position physically and composing your image. Luckily, you can see what you are looking at through your phone, and so that will allow you to line things up the way you want them to be. And of course, I would always recommend to leave a little bit of extra room so you can come into Lightroom, Photoshop, whatever you use to edit your images, and do some final cropping. And please forget about sticking to the standard what are they called, ratios. Yes. I kind of love people that, it has to remain 2 to 3. You cannot deviate from that. Of course you can. Of course you can. That's what borders are for. That's what borders are for. Notice, I don't care about my ratio as long as it looks perfect. I actually cut off something that was here by removing about 1/8 of an inch worth of image by cropping. That would have been distracting as can be. So now your eye is drawn to this region here, the top of the street. Converging lines always lead your eye to a point. And so that's what my goal was. And again, I just threw it up in the air, not throw it up. I flew it up in the air and I took that photograph just to see what it can do. It was just like one of these tests. And, hey, prove to me that you can actually do this, my friend. So it did. And I loved it. I loved the way it came out. I love the results. And so that's what I'm going to be doing a lot more of. I don't go out with my regular camera and shoot as much as I used to. Listen, I got back problems. I got knee problems. I got old man problems. Okay, so if I can just stand comfortably and fly a drone to a certain location and then shoot a photograph, boy, even if I only raise it 20 feet above the ground, I don't have to walk for a mile to get to some location. I can just fly there. Well, maybe not a mile, but you get what I mean. So again, and still get really, really good results. So I'm really, I don't know about you guys, what you guys think about this, and whether, oh gosh, Jose is gonna change the channel. No, I'm not. It's still going to be about printing. Okay. And as soon as a new printer comes out that I feel is reasonably good and worthy of being called a semi-pro photo printer, whether it's from Epson or Canon, and I don't mean 24 inch or 48 inch or 64. No, I mean relatively easy to transport type printer. It's coming to the print room, and so we can continue evolving as we go along. But again, like I said a while ago, it's looking like most new additions to the print world or the photo print world will probably be blocked, okay, from third-party uses. So I'm going to give one last check here at the YouTube comment section to see if there's anything new. Somebody had a R280, which is even older than that one that I have over there. Very simple printer. It was very, very old as well. Light greens come out dark and on the Epson R280. Well, that's not surprising. I've tried everything Jose suggested. The only way that light green comes out as if I use standard paper setting, but then the background is no longer pure white. Any input would be appreciated. Well, here's the thing. Here's a perfect example of obviously, if you don't know a subject well enough, then you really don't know what details you need to provide. If I say I just printed these and my reds are off, what do I have to do? I have no idea. How would I know? So again, not having had an R280 in my hands, using OEM colors, by the way, OEM inks, for, 15 years? Yeah, that long. I don't know what to do. So I said, color management, what settings, what did you use, what paper, what inks are you using? And so he wrote me back. He said, thank you so much for responding. I am using Epson inks designed for my printer. Okay. My iMac. My iMac is an older machine and provides very little hardware calibration. I do choose the printer's profile for the paper I am using, like you suggest. Well, see, you have to understand you are dealing with a real rookie here. Yeah. So I'm colorblind. And then he says he loves my videos on mini machining, which is my other channel that you guys probably don't know about. But anyway, yeah. So it always is always going to be related to color management or color workflow or printer driver settings that you just don't know. This is going to sound rude, but you just don't know what you are doing, just like I didn't know what I was doing. And that lasted a couple of years. I had no clue what the heck I was doing. I was about that close to give up until finally I decided to, just stop being a stubborn jackass and start listening to some people. And I slowly began to see the light, and finally I said, okay, now I understand the relationship between these types of functions, these types of theories, and so forth. And now I got 13 printers that I can literally, I'm telling you, I can literally load something up and go to QImage. If I have a stored preset or job, load it. It remembers all my settings that I did that were arrived at, step by step, to ensure that that particular printer would output something that matches my monitor to as much as it can match it. I can just go click, print, boom, done. Go upstairs, get a drink, come back down, and I stand in front of the printer and watch it come out, and I go, oh yeah, that's exactly what I expected. You see, so that comes with practice, with experience. And again, it's not that, oh, I'm such a smart guy. No, I'm not. I'm a big dummy. Okay? It took me that long. Okay? So now that I kind of know some of this stuff, I want to prevent all the new guys getting into this from having to go through this. So I'm going to give this guy an answer back and kind of, at least help him out so that he knows what he's getting into. And maybe possibly tell him that he really needs to upgrade. That printer is just no longer able to perform and produce the kind of prints that we can get with just even a lowly Pro 100. That printer was really made for documents. I don't think there were even any prosumer pigment printers available back then. And working on an iMac is different than working on a Windows machine, because the color management is totally different. It's controlled by the driver. It's controlled by the OS, actually. So you really don't know where you are, okay, as far as color management goes. Whereas on a Windows machine, you assume that if you tell the driver to control color, then, it goes into color sync or whatever the heck it is. And then when you switch over to let the application control color, that it automatically turns the color management off in the driver, which is what you normally do by hand on a Windows machine. And at least you know that you set it correctly or you did not set it correctly. Or you are assuming that the automation that takes place on a Mac OS driver for a given printer is actually occurring. Okay? You assume that. But you know what? I don't believe anybody. So you got to show me. So that's just me. Again, probably totally unnecessary, or maybe I shouldn't even said that, but I have to be shown. I have to be assured that because I set it to off, I know darn well it is off. And I'm not relying on any kind of automation or, hey, listen, because we know you're a dummy, we're going to do this for you automatically. Yeah, don't worry. We got your back. No, I don't want you to do it automatically for me. I want to do it manually every single time if I have to. Unless I want to use QImage and then I set a print job you get the drift. So anyway, all right. So let's see. Roger Goofert says this is the guy that's been talking about this for a while with the HP paper. Drone photos can be high resolution by doing photo merge. Yeah, multiple exposures. Yeah. So what I'm going to be doing on the Anafi is going to shoot a series of photographs. And there's a setting that you can just go bam, 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 bam. Okay, you can either do multiple exposures, like you can do like a bracketed series of images and then stack them in Photoshop, or just do the same shot, same exposure. You have a histogram on your application. You know where you're sitting. If you're clipping your highlights or you're clipping your shadows, you adjust everything. You can adjust contrast, you can adjust sharpness, you can adjust color, saturation, you name it, tint, everything in the application. Shoot a series of shots, boom, 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 boom. Blend them in Photoshop. Even though, my friend, I can count every single brick See that house way up there in the street? I can count every brick on that wall. I don't know if I want anything sharper than that. I really don't. But again, if it improves it visually, then it's something that you can actually, go ahead and do. All right, I think that's enough. Let's go ahead, and we got like 5 minutes. So I'm going to show you just a very quick shot of what I just recently did yesterday. And again, like I said, this is not even on the YouTube channel as of yet. So Brenda Harding has to go. Well, thank you, Brenda, for hanging out with us. Hopefully, we'll have you come back next week. Don't miss us. We're here every Saturday evening, or if something happens, Sunday afternoons, or Sunday afternoons at 5. Afternoon, evening, whatever. There may be a slight time change when we switch time pretty soon. I think next month is when it happens. So, I'll let you guys know what I do, what I decide to do. Okay, so let's go ahead and start this up. And we'll switch over to full screen. And I'll just go ahead and play it. And it's about, oh gosh. If it gets too long, I'll go ahead and stop it. But I want you guys to see at least the opener. So various shots around Nathan's woods and yard. Here we go. I'm hovering about 6 feet, and I brought the gimbal straight up. Tell me a DJI drone that can do this. I'm waiting. Now I'm walking through the woods, flying the drone between trees, down a path that we call the unmowed or the no-mow zone. Basically doesn't get mowed by the landscapers. This is about 6.5 acres of land that they have. So as you can see, we're looking straight up. The mechanical gimbal on this drone, the Parrot Anafi, goes 180 degrees straight up and down to 0. In other words, straight down. Okay, now we switch over to the yard. We're going to go ahead and take it for a little flight. P-Log is a shooting mode that basically gives you a very flat profile, meaning color profile, where it gives you a pretty wide dynamic range, and also basically gives you the most that the sensor can produce. And then you go ahead and through post-production adjust it the way you want it. And I really didn't adjust it too much. Now this is using standard flight mode, which basically locks the horizon, so you don't have any horizon tilt. But at the end, we're going to show you basically a few flights around the yard, showing you what it looks like using the cinematic mode, which actually unlocks that and gives you a more flow-like type result, if you will, like a fixed-wing aircraft would do, or a real helicopter would do, where you would actually have horizon tilt. This is the second house. Used to belong to Grandma. You may notice that I am adjusting the gimbal up and down as I fly, and that is very gradually controlled. It's actually The control that adjusts that can be set to different rates, which is really neat. So, and then it's got like a variable rate to it anyway, but you can actually set the limits or the speed at which the gimbal will move from minimal pressure to maximum pressure on the little button. It's actually like a swivel. Up for up and down for down. So it's really kind of idiot proof, which is what I need. Yeah, originally this was a 16-acre parcel of land, and these two homes were built, I want to say probably, this one is kind of the oldest one. This was built probably in the 60s, and then or maybe even earlier. Then the second home where my son, daughter, and her husband and Nathan live is the one built in 82, I believe. These are the woods behind their house. They have a vast spans of woods, which then if you continue walking through the woods, you end up at the perimeter, which is like a driving range for golfing. So as you can see, it's quite a house. There I am down here on the lower right. Very smooth flying characteristics of this drone. I have it set to very low rates because I want that look. Once I finish this, I'm going to show you what it looks like using cinematic mode. Now, notice that when I'm yawing from a straight directional travel to a yaw, that means a turn to the right or the left, it sort of does it a little bit abruptly. And that is because the gimbal is kind of neutralizing. There you go. Now that was a nice smooth stop from turning to straight travel. There I am, tiny right here in the bottom, right over there. And so once we finish, I think about now we're going to switch over to cinematic mode and you should be able to see the difference. It's very mild. It's not really a huge night and day, but it just adds this level of fluidity that you just don't get. The sun is right directly behind me, so everything is kind of bright. Like I said, I really didn't change the raw video too much in post editing. I just basically edited to the music as well as you could, because it's not music. It's not music with a beat. That's the sun going through the propellers actually causing that. I like shooting at this time of the day because of this direction of the light. Although when I shoot that big water fountain, I'm going to do it a little bit earlier in the day, and so you should be able to see a little bit more even lighting situation. So here I am. I'm going to fly right over me, continue flying beyond me. Again, super smooth. I mean, this is really neat. You can change the reaction to your sticks on the controller so that it is more linear or more like a curve. In other words, smoother rather than more abrupt. Now the reason I did a cut right there is because I decided to switch over to the cinematic mode. So now you're gonna notice as I yaw, you may see the horizon start to tilt in one direction to the other. Not a lot. I had it set to a like a minimum setting. There, you saw it right there a little bit. As I came from the yaw to the straight, now it's gonna tilt a little bit. There you go. You see that? So instead of having that abrupt change of direction without any kind of horizon tilt, now you're getting the horizon tilt. Here comes Dad, Nathan's dad in the red Subaru, and pretty soon Mom's gonna come behind him in her little Volkswagen Golf. Traffic was horrendous, she said. She was supposed to have been there like a half hour before. There you saw a little bit of that sway, if you will, which is, I think it adds a lot of fluidity to the video. The transitions from, directional transitions that you makes everything a little bit more smooth. Here comes Mom right there. And my son should be arriving a bit after that. My son and Dad, they work in the same location. They work for a big electronic digital security type company that do a lot of security for very high-end clients, actually. So there's Dad going to talk to Mom because I think he just decided to set up the bike racks on his car for Nathan and him. They're bike riders. So I just rotated the drone over to them, and I'm going to show you something. This is something that no other drone can do. Notice I'm walking toward the drone. Guess what? The gimbal's looking straight up at me. Yeah, I don't think any other drone can do that. So that's kind of an unusual type effect. But I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope I didn't lose everybody. Again, that's just part of the whole photographic thing, if you will. So we're going to go ahead and do that once again. We're going to go over to the fountain this coming week, and I'm going to shoot some photographs. I'm going to do some video, some reveal shots, and shoot some photos from up high. I want to shoot a photo straight down into the water fountain to show the whole pond around it. We're going to have to go up to a certain altitude. The only catch is there's a helipad about maybe 2 miles away, so I'm going to have to get approval to do this, and it's easy to do using AirMap. So anyway, that is it. Let me see if there's any more questions, and then we're going to go ahead and say goodbye. Yeah, DJI can't do that. Of course not. Yeah, this is something that is going to be incorporated as well on the new Skydio. If you guys haven't seen the Skydio 2, not the original one, the Skydio 2, Sky D-I-O, and then R, and then 2. Have a look at that. It's ridiculous. It is really intended for the sports type person who wants to carry a little controller with them, and you just lift your drone above, get on your motorbike, turn on the controller, and take off. The Skydio will avoid everything and will track you. Okay? I don't care if you go through a covered bridge, it will track you. Okay? I don't know how it does it. I think it uses the controller as a way of tracking. But it is fantastic. It's about $9.99 retail, and then you got to pay about $1, I wish, $149 for the controller. It actually uses the same controller as my Anafi, by the way. So this is a group out of MIT who decided to join forces with Parrot from Paris, and then created the Skydio 2. Skydio 2, have a look at it. There's nobody owns one yet, but have a look at it on YouTube and you will be amazed. And of course, I said, well, you know what? What do I need that for? Okay, I'm not going to be riding a motorcycle. You know, my kidneys would disappear if I did that. So can it fly like a regular drone? Of course. That's why they have the ability for you to use a true actual controller like the one I use for my Anafi, or the little handheld. It looks like a TV remote, and that's the one that's going to follow you regardless of what you do. Okay, there's a side-by-side video of it, Mavic 2 and the Skydio. And again, both of them are flying at the same time. The Skydio continued to follow the guy, and the Mavic 2 lost him after about maybe 20-30 seconds of following. Yeah. So big deal. I mean, you know, that's neither here and there. It is marketed to a certain demographics. Those people that are going to do mountain biking, skiing, water skiing, jet skiing, whatever, race car driving, what do they call it? The drifting, cars drifting on a track. Yeah, that kind of thing. That drone will follow you like it's stuck to you. It's amazing. 4K 60 video footage. Okay. And a gimbal that what? Goes straight up. Gee, I wonder where they got that from. And straight down. Amazing. Actually goes, I believe it goes beyond straight up. Maybe a little bit farther beyond, which is crazy. I mean, so this thing can actually fly under the bridge as you are walking across the, you know, like a rope bridge. You're walking across the rope bridge. It can fly underneath and then shoot you from upside down. It'll get shots that are nearly impossible to get with anything else. Again, it's just part of the technology. And that's why I say never stick to just one brand. Okay, if your computer usage, Windows and Mac, you can use both. There's uses for both. There's no need to chastise one brand over the other. Okay. DJI fans, they don't believe in anything else but DJI. That's wrong. You know, there's other things to explore out there. And pretty soon, as this comes out, they're going to have a little problem in their hands because they're going to have to come up with something that will outperform that drone. And it's going to be a tough cookie. Okay. A tough one to crack. Okay. All right. That is about it. Let me see if there's anything else. Mr. Dukes 3 says, we have a license to fly drone Canada under a certain weight. Yeah, this is, here it is 0.55 pounds or 250 grams and no more than 55 pounds. We don't need a license as a recreational pilot. In Canada, yeah, you do. You have to take an exam. They're still working on a exam for us non-licensed type pilots. In other words, that we do it for recreational use only. We'll have some, you know, some rules and regulations we have to abide by. Like I don't go above 200 feet anyway. So you have up to 400 feet because the lowest altitude for aircraft is 500. So you got a 100-foot buffer. Basically, the test is going to be basically a simple safety test that you'll have to take. And I believe they said it was going to be enforceable or available for you guys to, you know, here in the U.S., recreational pilots to take around November. But so far, I haven't heard a word on it. So I'm waiting for that. I already know all my rules. I already know all my safety needs and regulations that I have to abide by. So I'll be ready to take that test. And I'll be a so-called semi-licensed recreational pilot. I am looking forward to begin studying for my Part 107 in case I decide to go that route. And that will allow me to then do commercial work. So anyway, that is it. And then if I do that, then of course I'll migrate over to DJI products. And so that'll be that's the plan if it ever materializes. Alrighty. Okay, so that is it. I think no one else is asking anything. Let's go ahead and play some music. I'll say goodbye. I hope I don't mess up my slides. I know which one to do. So let me drop this volume down a little bit. Somebody was asking about free music to use without copyright. Well, this is it. YouTube has that available. I downloaded a ton of music So again, thank you so much for hanging with me. We'll see you next week again, same time, same channel, of course. And of course, subjects that I will be bringing up hopefully will be the upgraded firmware for the Pro 1000. I'm going to actually do that this week if I get the nerve. Okay, if I get the nerve for it, and I'll let you guys know how that works out. All right, thank you so much. Don't forget to subscribe, share, like. Happy flying, happy printing, happy everything, please. Bye bye, everyone.